Hey, everybody. Wow, people are on it. Welcome to Open Spaces. Got my friends Janelle and Paige here with me today. Emily, hey, I see you. Everybody, if you are here, throw something in the chat. Let us know how you're doing, what you're up to. We're going to have a lot to talk about this week. So before we jump in, I'm going to go ahead and let Janelle and Paige introduce themselves really quick. Paige, you want to start us off real quick?
Yeah, I'm Paige Weber. Some of you know me already. I'm a licensed counselor and still live in Kansas City. I was an OG, part of IHOP day one, and left around 2014, trickled out in the last few years. Yeah, so I represent the old school people.
OG.
Yeah.
And Janelle, you are leader of RFI.
The Supreme Ruler, actually.
Supreme Ruler, yeah, that's the title, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so that and court-appointed child advocate for those in foster care experiencing abuse, and also wrapping up my undergrad in psychology with women's studies and sociology studies. So got a little dabbling in the feminist movement. You might hear some of that come out of me. But yeah.
Super grateful to have both of you here. I'm going to give my little spiel now that people have started to trickle in. Yeah, Anik, it has been a brutal week. And so I'm really glad to be able to sit here with you guys and kind of process some of it in a space that feels safe. So if you've not been with us before, Open Spaces is like a online community gathering started for those of us who came out of IHOPKC, and we've kind of expanded past that a little bit to people who are processing their experiences with in charismatic spaces. Right, we've got all these abuse stories coming out weekly, and it feels like a tsunami. And so we wanted a place where we could actually see each other's faces and hear each other's voices and process with people who understand. So
be named and faced.
Yeah. So you're going to hear a pretty diverse variety of perspectives. And we're not here to debate them. We're not here to land on definitive decisions or judgments or anything like that. We're actually here just to kind of muddle through the feelings, all that sort of thing brings up, and all those experiences bring up. And so we have a little saying around here that we borrow from a friend, which is, we're here to listen with an empathetic ear, so that we can kind of move forward together. Oh, my tech support's here. Be kind, listen with empathy, not the place for debate. So that said, I want to give a quick trigger warning. For the first 20 minutes of this, with a hard stop at 8 p.m., we're going to talk about a news story that came out that is going to... The scrolling trigger warning is killing me. We're going to talk about a story that came out this week. And it's a hard story. It involves someone whose news story we followed. And so my trigger warning is this kind of touches on child sexual abuse and the complexity surrounding that. And so I know that's sensitive for some people. So I want to give a heads up so that you know how long we're going to talk about it. If you want to jump out and you're in a space where that's just too much for this week, that's appropriate. We want you to be able to take care of yourself.
And we're not going to kind of talk about it. We're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about it. Yeah.
If you're like, oh, I could maybe handle a kind of like,
we're not going to go heavy into details. And I actually want Paige to kind of set us up with some good boundaries around it. And so, but we're going to spend around maybe 5 to 10 minutes discussing kind of the feelings that that's going to bring up. And that's what we're going to, that's what we're going to keep it on. We're not going to get into huge details. This isn't about judging that scenario, but really processing our feelings. And then we're going to jump into the aspects of the lawsuit and the impact of that. So I want Paige to kind of lead us in that because she's a therapist. And then it feels really good this week for me that we have both Paige and Erica here who have a lot of experience in those areas. So what we're going to do then is move to Sam Storms at 8 p.m. And we're going to all shout Sam Storms in the chat just because I think it's dramatic and funny. And so you will know if you watch the chat that we have moved on, and then it's good for you to come back. And I just really want you to feel okay protecting your heart, okay? Like I jump out of these conversations all the time. There are news articles I don't read. I did not read the legal filing on this because I knew I had a really busy day and I just didn't have the space to process it. So I more have worked with the feelings it brought up. So with that, Paige, can you start us off?
Yeah. So just thinking about and owning like what you're feeling in your body. And if you feel a check, just knowing that it is okay to pause and take a breath and come back. Or if you start listening and you need to pause, that's okay. But, you know, the thing about trauma is we're taught not to listen to our body. And in this case, we want to do the exact opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to introduce what we're going to talk about?
Yeah. So there's a lawsuit. A lot of you might remember Justin, whose last name I can't not remember actually at this moment. But he came out with a story of sexual abuse by Larry Lucky, where he went to Larry Lucky. His parents sent him to Larry Lucky to discuss feelings around sexuality, and Larry then ended up sexually abusing him. So this lawsuit has been filed against Judy Thomas. She's the reporter for the Kansas City Star who has been kind of our link in the IHOPKC community to legitimate legacy media versus I want to use the word legitimate, meaning like that's our link. Like if your story runs in the KC Star, you can maybe get in the New York Times. You know what I mean? Whereas Julie Roy's is niche. She's a very specific subject and they're not going to pick up a story from her. So it's a big deal. It's a huge attack. But within that lawsuit, so the people named in that lawsuit, Judy Thomas, the Kansas City Star, and Justin for defamation. And we can talk about the legal implications in a minute, but in that filing on like the first page, it's disclosed that Justin, who was Larry Lucky's victim, was also, as a child, convicted of sexual abuse of another child. So at age 11, and this is a really hard topic, you're allowed to be angry, you're allowed to feel betrayed. You don't have to, some of you are going to feel like, I've seen a mix of reactions, like betrayal, and then some people feel like sympathetic, and some people feel a mix. And that's normal and okay, and we don't have to all feel the same thing.
And then both can be true. We can feel both things.
Yes.
We can feel betrayed and we can also feel empathetic.
Yeah.
So some of the details on that is that Justin's dad reported him. This happened in Minnesota. Justin's dad did report him and then to the police, and then he was convicted. I think I'm getting that correct. So, yeah, so we're going to open there and kind of talk about some of the feelings that might bring up. And I want you to know that it's okay that we're going to have different feelings. It's really, it's heavy and it's really hard. And I think it touches on something that a lot of us, you know, I think a lot of us probably have had either abuse experiences or histories that feels tangled up in. I don't know how you guys reacted. I just felt like I was hit like a ton of bricks on a whole bunch of fronts.
Yeah, definitely. It was not what I was not ready for that. Already been a hard enough week.
Yeah, and I think I had a mix of feelings because it felt so ugly to have that listed. I was reading Dr. Denouement, but Dr. Seuss was saying it's technically hearsay. Like that would have been a sealed record, and that brought up like a mix of feelings for me. Because I know it was likely disclosed to Judy Thomas. So I don't know. But he was like kind of the poster boy for bravery for a hot minute, and that felt so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think some of that was true for me, and then also, you know, I had that mix of like, is that part of why Larry chose him?
Yeah. Oh, and I do want to give a quick disclaimer. When we're talking in the chat, I want us to be really careful in the words that we choose right now because everyone's in a really raw place. So if we could keep specific words that are going to be triggering out of it and keep it to abuse and just use that umbrella term, I think that'd be really helpful right now. Sorry, go ahead, Paige.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we just really need to be sensitive that even if someone's hopping off, that they might still read the chat.
Yeah.
And so I love that we want to be extra sensitive to people and where they're at. I definitely had lots of feelings about that coming up of like, is that part of what led Larry to abuse him, was this kind of guilt and shame that he already had existing, you know? And then also anytime, just, this is the therapist in me talking, so it's not factual, it's not truth, but anytime I hear of an 11-year-old convicted of any kind of crime, I have to pause and say, what happened in that young man's life that he made those choices?
Yeah.
And so I definitely held both space. I held space that was outraged and angry that this would be the person that would have to, you know, be a front runner victim. And on the other side, it had some sadness and empathy for this guy's life, that now everyone, that maybe his record might have been expunged, but now everyone will, the world will know his deepest, hopefully, regret.
I think it brings up feelings of like, can I trust no one? Like, you know, like there's this really broken place in me where it's like these cycles of abuse go on and on and on. And is there anyone who's not tangled up in it?
Yeah.
You know, and it just feels so hard. I'm going to pull this comment up real quick. As I was mowing the lawns, I was just thinking that when he came forward for Larry Lucky, that there was a possibility of this being exposed. Yeah, and he knew that. Yeah. And I think he did disclose that, if I remember right, to Judy Thomas. But let me pull this up too. If anyone's followed ACNA, there's a similar situation A primary victim was involved in the victimization of another. This made it hard, but she still came forward. That community celebrated her supposed downfall, but I respected her for pushing a hard conversation. Yes, I was abused, and in my ignorance, victimized another. I think that's a really empathetic take.
Yeah.
I also want to say that if you don't have the empathy in you, that's okay right now.
Yes.
It's really important to be honest about the feelings we're actually feeling, and we're not judging those feelings.
Yeah. And I think everyone at IHOP in various levels is a victim, right? You were on one of the two sides. You were either an abuser or you were a victim. And then we had people in the middle, right, that were both abusive and victims. And so even within your own experience, that's going to impact the way that you see and view this experience.
Yeah. I think too is just realizing that, we as a society, we look for the perfect victim. And when we don't find that perfect victim of like flawless background and history, it's so easy for society to, dismiss like, well, then they must be a liar too, because there's no way that, they could have done these things and also have been a victim as well. And these cycles of abuse, it's very complicated, especially with child abuse. Like it's incredibly complicated. You're talking about stuff that's happening while the brain is still forming and growing. And, that was prepubescent age. And that's just going off of the limited information that we have. So I can't imagine the complexities behind that. That's really hard.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to quote Sigmund Freud here because
I love this. I know where you're going with this. I love
that
it.
in his original work of trying to understand the human psyche, Freud's brilliant. You can disagree with me, but he was the first person to ever consider like what is the inner world of man, and people either loved him and hate him, and all modern psychology is based on whether you loved him or hated him. But one of his original thoughts was the idea that all of mankind has a darkness within, and all of mankind has a goodness within. And, this is a guy who grew up during World War II, like watched some of his siblings be killed by Hitler. And really reconciling the idea of like all of us have both good and bad within us.
Yeah.
And no one has the perfect life, right? Like we all have both good and bad within us. And I think that is the hard thing, even with you take someone like Deborah who came forward. She's not a perfect human, and we can't make her out to be one, right? Like she's a truth teller, but you can dig into anyone and find something.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. It one of the things that it brought up for me is in a lot of this, it's felt like the spiritual abuse and the sexual abuse really parallel each other. When I think about abuse in general, like there's patterns, and I want to be careful because I don't want to minimize sexual abuse. It's devastating. So I'm not saying the same at all. But I am saying that it's so hard that when we, even with what we've been bringing forward and advocating, it's been this really messy space where there are people who were spiritually abusive, and there's ones who have owned that, and there's ones who haven't, and it's been really painful. This is a really great point. This is hard. I hope the original victim is not harmed by this. And that is a devastating thought.
Yeah.
because there is something about seeing your abuser be hailed as a hero. And I think that that's been a really painful place for a lot of people in this, where, and I know it's often with spiritual abuse, but yeah, that's been a really painful place in this process, is sometimes you're watching your spiritual abuser out on Twitter fighting for what's right now. And that's really hard. That's really hard.
And, I would take that a step further to say the original victim was harmed.
Yeah.
If following it all, it would be near impossible to not be.
Yeah.
When I think about people who have come forward, they've been harmed.
And I think what's hard about this is that I cannot look at this and go, I wouldn't have wanted him to come forward. Because, again, there's a comment in here somewhere. I don't know where it is, but just that he came forward to end the cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
Knowing that he had participated in that cycle.
And knowing that it was possible what would come forward.
Yes. Yeah. And then I don't know if I brought this up earlier, but inner healing was used to expose certain people who had propensities to these issues. And some of those people were targeted by leaders and mid-level leaders. So basically, like, actually targeting people based on their histories to abuse them and then sort of unleash them as abusers. And I think that was a really messy part of IHOP and Living Waters.
And I think the bigger picture, so I think it's good to kind of talk through some of the feelings with it and be aware of them, and we can always kind of revisit it. But I want to also make sure we leave time, before 8:00 to really talk about the legal side of this case. And I'm going to lean to the more savvy legal expert here. Janelle, tell us a little bit about your thoughts and just the legal side of what's to come.
What specifically?
So, explain just a minute, like defamation suit and how does that all play out? Like for people who don't know anything, like.
I know so I'm not familiar in terms of like child on child abuse, because the cases that I've worked with have largely been their caregivers.
I'll tell you this, with the defamation suit, the major issue here is that Judy Thomas is legacy media. The timing of the filing is pretty significant. The timing of that particular lawyer's receiving her licensure in Missouri is October, I believe, 24th, 2023. If that date rings a bell for you guys. That's because that's when the AG was saying, hey, we're gonna go public. You have 24 hours. So the fact that's when this lawyer suddenly becomes licensed in Missouri. They're filing this, and it's probably going to go to a First Amendment situation. But then at the same time, they're going to do discovery. So they're going to immediately request. So we lose Judy Thomas immediately.
So you say legacy meaning, but that's Casey Starr, right?
So Casey Starr meaning like newspapers versus like with Daystar, they filed, they did cease and desists for all of the YouTubers covering it. So in this case, Casey Starr was like our link to getting these stories out. So it's going to have a chilling effect where victims are going to be worried about coming forward. And this is happening in tandem with a lawsuit against the SBC and guideposts by a predatory pastor who absolutely committed harm. And he's trying to sue the victim, guideposts, and the SBC for investigating him and publishing that investigation for $100 million. So, and Mr. Juan, when I say we lose Judy Thomas, what I mean is that Judy will no longer be able to write on IHOPKC. She had another article, I think, that she was working on. A lot of people have talked to her. She's talked to the AG. She's talked to Justin, obviously. She's talked to victims, and those audio files and emails and texts, all those records are going to be, they're going to motion to have those in discovery. And so it's like a fact fight. It's like a fishing expedition. What can they use and leverage to create more pain, to scare more victims, and to stop major players in the media legitimizing forces, like the case, like Julie Roy's is absolutely legitimate. I'm not shitting on that, but like, who reads that? I'm already swearing, but who reads that? Christians, right? There is it's a narrow window of people, and whereas the number of people that Casey Starr reaches and what that links us into, like we can then that leads to, Washington Post coverage, New York Times coverage. They will pick up those articles. And so what they're doing is they're firing a warning shot saying, hey, we're going to fuck with you if you fuck with us.
Yeah.
We're going to make your life a living hell. Now, this particular attorney, she's a really big name attorney, like massive. She's worked on really high level cases for a lot of, like for a conservative watchdog, like against like the EPA and I can't remember her name. You can look her up. It's like Karen Swice something.
Of course it's Karen. Of course.
I know, right? I'll find it and we'll throw it in the chat. Apparently, I mean, someone whose tech support could maybe look at but that particular attorney that Lisa Hoskins might know the name of would just throw some clues.
Throwing it out there.
Has done a lot of defamation cases in the past and lost a lot, but it is really wild. Do we know who's paying for the lawsuit? No. So likely the money behind it, there's probably big money behind it.
So that would be a good chat that if people want to get into that.
Yeah.
So just kind of summarizing, basically, Larry Lucky's hired a big name lawyer to go after the Star legacy media with the idea of squashing all the content and kind of losing one of the safest allies in the media, in the public
And it's
media.
unlikely that it's Larry. It's much more likely we have Daystar,
Another.
and we have Charisma Magazine,
Yeah.
and we have, if you go online, you can see this is our 1 minute warning, so we're gonna cap it after this. But if you go online, you can see that Malachi O'Brien has been posturing, and he was involved with that Hunt lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
So Hunt is a perpetrator in the SBC. So and so there is
It's all coming together now.
Yeah, there's a big network that is protecting these platforms because these platforms. Yeah, so Charisma could absolutely be involved, Susanna.
Yeah.
And Larry is not super wealthy. I think that this is a network where abusers protect abusers.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in the past. Perry Stone And this is our end point for Larry Lucky. So if everyone could just type Sam Storms in the chat for people who walked out, that would help me out. But Perry Stone, like another guy who has allegations against him. Oh, there we go. Karen Moore Swigert. So you can look her up, and we can dip back into the legal side next time.
Yeah.
But we're gonna move on to Sam Storms.
Sam Storms.
But yes, there's likely other money behind it.
Yeah. I feel like we need a drum roll or like a change.
I know, right? We need like some. Here we go.
Come on, back of the house. We need like sound effects. Like,
what do you guys? Who would like to?
So I want to take a moment though, Susan, if we can, and I just want to encourage everyone to like take a breath in.
Yeah, we gotta.
And out. And it's exactly that. So if you're wiping energy off, you want to do it in 3. So you wipe down, and then you wipe an arm, and then you wipe the other arm, and you let it go. Just take a moment to like pivot. So we don't take too hard of a stop. So for people that was a lot, to just, okay. It is such a core value, and it's one thing I love about coming on and helping out, that we do just care. This has been a heavy week. I've cried buckets this week. I can't speak for everybody, but damn, it's been a lot.
I got myself a good cry this week.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do some Sam Storms. Who wants to read aloud for the group?
Not the dyslexic. So
we've heard enough of my voice. Janelle, it's on you.
Read it. It just won't be the words.
Yeah, that's you, girl.
This is gonna be a lot though, guys. Okay. We ready?
Is it real long? I didn't even read it.
It's a bit.
I think we could highlight though.
Okay. We can highlight. Just skip the parts you think are boring.
Yeah, the first half was like, hey, I want to address this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's places to look at.
I mean, you typed out julieroyce.com, so.
Right. But he does a good job of saying, like, the purpose of his letter is.
Yeah, we can start there. That looks good. That's a good spot.
Okay. Right there. Okay. Don't move it. Jeez. Okay. So this is not me, you guys. This is Sam. I'm heartbroken beyond words. When people ask me why I didn't discern anything during my 35-year relationship with Mike Bickle, I have no good answer. My only solace is that no one else detected anything amiss in the man. I'm not trying to excuse my blindness and lack of discernment. I simply don't know why God waited as long as he did to uncover Bickle and his sins.
Okay, we might need to pause and take a breath there.
Yeah, that was a lot.
I have lots of thoughts and feelings about that paragraph. Yeah, so there was a lot of gaslighting in the Metro days, especially around if you heard something, that there would be 3 people around to ensure that definitely wasn't the case. And even in the early days of IHOP, I had dreams and things, and Mike would preach in a way that I'd be like, yeah, I'm definitely hearing it wrong. Like I had a dream that the front page of the Kansas City Star said that Mike Bickle was sleeping with a woman and having an affair. I did. It was like in freaking 98. And I thought, oh, she's the Black Horse. Like she was a legit singer on Monty Poe's team. It was that time. Like, and I was convinced this woman was a Black Horse because guess what he was preaching on?
Yeah.
I think it's a great example of like, you know, did I hear? Did I not? Did I, you know, like, so I want to give him a little bit of grace, and you can 100% disagree with me. That he had so much skill at deception.
So I didn't find him convincing, and I do understand being caught up in the context, right?
Yeah.
I think that different people. I'll give you a recent example. So I got a friend, and she and I had very different feelings on one person, and I was like, I don't know. I think like he's okay. I was wrong. I was straight up wrong, and it blew up in my face this week. And for Mike, I think there were people who were consistently warning. I think that is hard. It's hard because I think that we have vulnerability in the areas that are dear to us and that we want to be true. So like one of my vulnerabilities is men who are trying, who are leaders, who are, who seem to see value in what I do. That's an area for me that's hard. So like what was hard for me with that section is like I actually wrote Sam Storms back in the day. And I was like, hey, you have this article. What should we think about the House of Prayer? And it gets sent to me every time that I tell the stories of abuse that are happening there. And it is so frustrating to me because you aren't listening to the people who have been there and experienced abuse. Mm-hmm. And I sent this email. I got no response. And I ended up talking to his board eventually recently to two different members of his board. One more than the other. Yeah, to Sam Storm's board. Yeah. And because he was going to do a book on the prophetic history. And I was like, love to have a conversation with you about that and why that would be so deeply offensive.
Yeah.
Where's Wendy's comment? I want to bring that up.
Yeah, it said, I'm still a Christian, but at what part I thought, can you leave God out of this for now? I'm just like, Wendy, come on and bring it. Like, I know Wendy, she's old school too. It's so true. Can't you just admit your humanness in it? Like, I got duped.
Yeah. So I'm having trouble with that because I'm like, I don't know why. And here's the line that I'm having trouble with is I simply don't know why God waited as long as he did to uncover Bickle and his sins. And I am not quite a Christian. I don't know what I am. I don't like saying I'm not because I don't know what the fuck I am. And I also don't want to let it go because I'm like, F you. But
I'm not identifying at the moment.
I'm not. I think part of me is like, you don't get to take that from me. So if you don't know who Sam Storms is, I'm going to give you some context, but he was actually a pastor at Metro alongside Mike, and he went on to pastor a pretty large church. And so he's seen as like this voice of charismatic reason.
And so, but Sam, part of what makes Sam unique, so I'm going to interject, is that Sam was not charismatic. So Sam came out of a conservative background. He met Mike, and Mike convinced him that this is like the move. And so Sam was always seen as this like level-headed, and he taught all the theology classes.
Yeah.
So he was seen as like the theological backboard or the spine of Metro.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was really the thing about Mike is that he surrounded himself with other leaders who could validate him. So he was really big on, oh man, there was someone else. Yeah, Sam was a Wheaton professor. Yeah. I think I love this comment here. He blamed his blindness on God. Open your damn eyes. And for me, I think this is a big thing for me. Everyone's like, this is like Rick Joyner being like, oh, I asked that God would reveal anything, but I forgot to say, God, would you reveal it now? And that's why I didn't see it. No, people fucking told you. People told you and you didn't. You chose not to listen. And you need to, like, my big thing is, like, I told you, Sam Storms. I told you in 2010. But you didn't listen to me.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't see my letter. I think I emailed and I left a comment on his blog. And so my thing is like, there's this mentality that I know I'm the man who knows, and I'm the, authority, and I know better. And so they're not actually listening or seeing the people who bring up these things as legitimate sources of information or wisdom or insight, because they have this hierarchical concept of insight and wisdom where they're at the top.
Yeah.
But I want to, and I'm being a bit of a devil's advocate here, but I also want to
have
say,
different feelings.
It wasn't just Sam who missed it. It was Alan Hood. It was Dwayne Roberts. It was, we'll pretend it's Corey Russell.
Yeah.
Well, like, it's these other people, Elizabeth Herder, like, I missed it. I saw creepy things. I felt creepy things, and I, push away, gaslight. We all fell for it. And that's why I say master manipulator, because he was so good at creating such fierce loyalty that people said a lot of crap about him, and they dismissed it. There were so many red flags. Everybody now, even when I read the report, I was like, oh, Mike did that to me. Like, I was groomed in ways I didn't even think about, because it was so ingrained into the culture and the environment that it was easy to just dismiss it, of like, well.
I think what I would want to hear is, I should have listened. Because it's not true that no one told him.
That's true. Yes.
For me, it's not an issue that people miss it, because I know that I miss it. I missed it this week. And I had a conversation with a friend, and she said, hey, here's why. And we read the same message. And she said, he's being dismissive. He's being minimizing. He's saying he's too busy. And I said, hey, I'm not reading the same thing. And I missed it. And I went back and was like, damn, you were right. That is what he's doing. And I said, I want to find a way to listen when you have those flags. And for me, that's what it is. It's because I think you're right. A lot of people did miss it. He was good at manipulating people. And then there were people who did see it. And those people were always pushed out. And I think we have this culture in charismatic spaces that calls that skepticism and unbelief. And it's not. It's that certain people are good. Ben is asking us to read the next section. And Ben, I love that you're bringing this up, because I do think Sam Storms has good character. And I want to affirm that.
Well, I think he was in a different direction, though.
There are moments in here where I get pissed at him, but I think he also can have moments in here where we can say, hey, that says something about who you are. It was a myth. We can be like, fuck you, and also good job on that.
Yeah, right.
All right, keep going.
Yeah, so he said, I'm truly deserving of whatever ridicule or criticism that comes my way for being blind to this man's true character. It forces me to ask, why would anyone ever trust my judgment again?
Damn, okay.
I can't do the past or gloss over my mistakes, but I can speak honestly and sincerely to many of you who are deeply wounded by my vocal support of Bickle through the years. It grieves me beyond words that some of you have walked away from the Lord and from his church because of Bickle's betrayal of all of us.
I could have done without the last part.
Yeah, I was like, but
I mean, I think
like, don't be sad about that. Just be sad about my hurt. Don't care about my faith. But it is sad. I
think for Christian people, for me, that was a really meaningful sentence.
I think so. And I think what's hard for me is I can say that about other people. I can say that it grieves me beyond words that people have had their faith taken from them by betrayal.
Absolutely.
I don't mind if you process through and you go, hey, you know what? I don't believe this anymore. That's one thing.
I think for me personally, there's that little reaction, like that knee-jerk reaction to it, just because of the theology behind it. And maybe he means it in a different way. Does that make sense? Like, because that sentence, it could read two different ways.
Like walked away from the Lord as a sort of like rebellion or rejection versus
the pain and the horror and the
because I really view it as, for a lot of us, faith became trauma.
Yes.
And it was too hard to sit in that space.
Yeah.
And then maybe we processed out of it. But the initial loss of it was a trauma. It became a traumatic space and a trigger. And at least that was my experience of it. And so that is different. I didn't choose to walk away from the Lord. I got cut the fuck off.
Yeah.
And it was really painful and it was really traumatic and I grieved it. Yeah. And I think this is a great, at least you wrote an apology. It's better than crickets or calling us demonic. Yeah. I think we can have like mixed feelings about it. Cause like, I actually really appreciate it. And I really feel like it's coming from a good place.
Yeah.
And I agree with Ben Wood. He said a pastor's going to pastor.
Pastor's going to pastor. No, it literally was a pastor being a pastor.
And I don't want to speak to,
it's true.
As we hold space for like Susan's story of kind of falling, like as I, like moving out of things and feeling cut off, as someone who has to reconstruct and rebuild, that's also a terrifying space, because everything about the C word is hard for me. I don't want to go sing songs. I went to a place and they were singing freaking day and night. I like left in tears. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And for a year I sat in this church under this guy, and every week I would think, why should I believe anything he's saying? How do I know he isn't another Mike? How do I know that?
Yeah.
And, really wrestling through those things and wrestling through like, what is safety for me?
Yeah.
And that's also like hard, Sam. Like there's a whole group of us that are trying to hang on. And I always joke and I say, Jesus, hold my beer. Because I'm like, I'm coming back, but I don't think I can sit here right now. Like I need a minute. And that's hard. And I want to make sure that hopefully tonight we can still talk a little bit about Carly's post too.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot, but I do want to say this. I deeply respect that Sam was willing to be the first to have the guts to do that, because he knew he would be on the firing squad. He knew that that it was no matter how well he would have written it, there would be feedback, right? But a lot more than a lot of guys did.
And I think that we've said over and over of the leaders who have been in part of IHOP, all that anyone wants is an apology. And you are going to come under fire for the apology. That's what's really hard about it. It takes humility. In my own marriage, that's a real thing. When you apologize, what happens is, from my perspective, you're signaling emotional safety for the person to take one step further with you into the harm. So a lot of people, when they bring an apology and they feel like that's going to bring resolution, and it doesn't at first. What really happens is it signals to the other person, I care about the harm that was done. And usually they have more they need to process through from that point. And that's really disorienting to a lot of people, because then they're like, hey, I stepped out in humility and vulnerability, and now you are coming at me again. But what's really happening is they're meeting your vulnerability with their vulnerability. They're feeling safe enough to come to you with, hey, and here's how that hurt me, and here's how your apology is hurting me. But it's actually communication.
Well, and I want to be clear, because this is opposite of what we were taught at IHOP, is that an apology is not the same thing as forgetting.
Right.
And an apology is not the same thing as suddenly you're a safe person. An apology is simply an attempt to repair something that they know they created that was unsafe.
Yeah.
And so I just want to, it's not a I'm sorry, like on the playground where I kicked your leg and walked away and said sorry. It's I would like to begin to build a bridge of safety that maybe men who have some integrity could actually step up and say, we didn't do this well. And, I commented early on a post, I was like, I would love to see Michael Sullivan come out with something similar for the same reason of like, I've heard him on multiple podcasts, and now he's creating a spiritual coaching business. And I haven't heard him say, I missed it. And he was supposed to be the spokesperson for the prophetic back in the day.
I feel like I've heard him say it, but I'm not sure. I haven't heard him say it in all this.
Yeah.
I think it was really soft. I'm thinking back because I
Yeah.
think I was really angry with him when he was in a church. But I think a couple years ago, I remember saying something.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is the kind of situation where it warrants saying it again.
I
did want to
every week.
Right. Yeah. Well, because not everyone's going to see it.
I mean, I checked in with people and said, hey, if I hurt you, I want to know, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I was a leader in Pure Heart, and I did my very best to try to, like, care and love on people, but I didn't know what I was doing.
I forgot about Matt Gilman's post.
Oh,
If you're not familiar, Matt Gilman was a worship leader at IHOPKC. He was in my internship, actually. Fun story about Matt. Sorry, Matt. I can tell that story about Matt, actually. Matt killed it this week. And I was going to troll him a little bit, but I'm not going to do that. His post took such a strong stance. And what I loved about it was he said, I would not send my children to IHOPKC because it is not safe.
And I love
like
kids.
Damn, say it.
Yes.
Like I was so like, fuck yeah, Matt. And I thought it was going to be shitty. The only triggering part of it for me was at the end, he was like, Maranatha. And I was like, but like, no shade. Like he can say Maranatha all he wants. It was really nice to see a worship leader just say it like that. And we've dropped a link to Matt's post.
He went so far as to say that the entire ministry was rotten.
Yeah, and that felt so
good to be redeemed.
Yeah, and that was great.
That was huge.
I like this right here. Many of us have reached out and apologized to people. So a lot of us have said, hey, I'm sorry. I have watched you say sorry. So I did not give a trigger warning for Maranatha. So yeah, I mean, like I've reached out to people and said sorry. I have when I reached out to, I had a summer teen intern and she popped into RFI and I was like, hey you, I was totally your internship leader and I'm so sorry. Because that's real. We all were part of it. And some of us, because we were a safe person, that is what made people believe it was safe. That was what was so hard about Mike, is he surrounded himself with people who legitimized him and who were safe people, in the sense that when they did see, when they did become aware of harm, they changed course. Yeah. Some of them, you don't have to trust them, because some of them, it felt a little like the writing of the ship was pretty temporary. I got some words for Corey Russell, man. That fucker.
We'll get to that. We got to get back to Sam Storms, though. We were building up to the apologies. Yeah.
So I wish
Wait,
he could
so
have
this
just
was the
written
part.
all this in one section instead of say, I apologize, repent, and forgive like 16 times. Like, we could have just like put some bullets in there, Sam.
I feel like it's really, really biblical of him to do this, to do it
Just
this way.
bullet that. Well, I'm
Well,
the
that's it,
dyslexic.
yeah.
There's some feedback. So
He's apologizing for influence. He's apologizing. I do like this. Those of you who may have moved to Kansas City and joined IHOPKC on the strength of my endorsement. I love that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, apologizing for speaking in public and public support of him. Those have suffered under abusive leadership because of his words of endorsement. Apologizing for anyone who's sexually victimized.
well, I actually want to read this part aloud. I want to read it so people can take it in, because this may be the only apology we're ever going to fucking get.
The sums of money?
Yeah. This can my tech support scroll up slightly? Thank you. I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from those of you who suffered. So if you have it in you, just take a moment and take it in. I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from those of you who suffered under his abusive leadership because of words that I spoke in public support of him. Please forgive me.
Please forgive me.
I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from anyone who was sexually victimized by Bickle, having put yourself in a position to endure such sin because you trusted my words of affirmation. Please forgive me. I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from those of you who invested considerable sums of money into the ministry of IHOPKC and into Bickle personally based on what you might have heard or read from me saying he was trustworthy. Please forgive me. I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from those of you who suspended your critical judgment of Bickle simply because I did. I love that one. Please forgive me.
Yeah.
I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from those of you who have lost confidence in the truth of the Bible because of Bickle's sinful conduct and my failure to warn you about it. Please forgive me. I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from those of you who have grown cynical or suspicious about the work of the Holy Spirit and the charismatic gifts because of your trust in my misguided belief that Bickle was good and godly representative of what being a biblical charismatic should look like. Please forgive me. I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from those of you who have walked away from your faith or from the church or in the process of deconstructing because of Bickle's transgressions, having put your confidence in him because you heard my endorsement. Please forgive me. I apologize, repent, and ask forgiveness from those of you who suspended your pursuit of higher education or a career, or even delayed getting married and having children because of the teaching of Bickle concerning the urgency to be prepared as forerunners of the imminent appearance of Jesus. Some of you may have embraced this approach because you know I had spoken highly of the ministry of IHOPKC. Please forgive me. I'm certain that there are others to whom I owe this apology and request for forgiveness. I will continue to search my soul for insight on this. And whenever I discover other ways in which I misled you concerning Bickle and IHOPKC and caused you to suffer spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, sexually, or theologically, I will quickly and sincerely repent and ask for your forgiveness. Until then, may God bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you. Sam Storms. So I'm just going to pause because I think a lot of us maybe needed to hear an apology for some of those things. And I think there's things that probably weren't touched on. Some of us had children early. Some of us have a lot of children. I had a lot of children. And that's not bad. But
I think there's something powerful about hearing it read aloud.
Yeah.
Out of the voice of someone in pain reading it. And it is exactly what you said. It's the first time, like, whoa, I feel it now. It's the first time that I have ever heard someone say, I apologize for any of it out loud.
Yeah.
And there's something so there's something to honor there. And there's something very precious in that, of pausing and taking a moment for all of us to collectively say, he was sorry. And they all should have said that, but isn't it great that someone did?
Mm.
And how healing that is for our community to own that, to take that in and allow us to hear it out loud. Because I'd already read it, but man, it hit at a different level hearing it out loud. Just someone again and again saying, I apologize. I apologize. I apologize.
And I just want to acknowledge that I think there's some of you that probably don't, that it didn't impact that way. And that's okay. I do have a light connection to Sam Storms. And I think that's part of it for me, is that there's a pastor from Remnant Radio that I had a conversation with a while back. Someone connected me and they said, hey, we really would like feedback. We saw some of your comments. We would like feedback from a woman, because we want to hear from an actual woman some of these thoughts and who has been impacted. And so I had a long conversation with them about how his endorsement impacted people. And I think a lot of people, they were seeking, I'm not the only person to talk to, but they were seeking, when they would see somebody, they were seeking they wanted to hear impact, and they wanted to bring that to him, because he wanted to know, but he's not having all these conversations because he's an old dude, and he was listening to some of them. And so, but the fact that his board was talking about it, he was seeking out some of these conversations. It was disorienting for me. Because it had been a long time since anybody gave a shit how it impacted me. And I when I have conversations with pastors, I'm pretty guarded. But I ended up, we've talked a couple times, and one of the times I just cried, because it was just very disorienting to hear kindness from a pastor and someone who just actually really deeply cared and seemed to get it and listened until they got it. So I don't know.
And I think my hope is, whether you agree or disagree with anything we're saying, or if you didn't hear that letter the same way we did, or the same impact, that there's space for that.
Yeah. And I'm acknowledging my own connection to it in a very ADHD rambling way that might have caused me to have more of a reaction to it than another person, where it would just feel like, okay.
Yeah.
I think at other points in my
and it might be different too for me, because I knew Sam, and I was there in the Metro days, and so it might have hit me differently than someone who came much later.
Yeah.
And all of it's valid.
Yeah. I mean, I did not know him personally outside of, a teaching setting, being in the classroom. And so for me, it brought up really complicated, big emotions in all directions, where it was like, whereas, yes, a lot of that feeling, Susan and Paige, it just, wow, my gosh, like somebody actually apologized and actually said those things, said a lot more than what a lot of leaders would be unwilling to say. And I appreciated that it was said, but there's also part of me that's kind of like, having been through years and years of gaslighting and minimizing, and then, you know, after reading the intro, it's a little hard to like reconcile those two sides of it. And then, and again, this is just speculation. I don't know him personally, so it's harder for me to connect with knowing like where his heart is, I guess, and things, and like how genuine it is. I know I have family members that they can say those same things, but it's more about like a narcissistic kind of like, they're really great at the speeches and the grandiosity.
Yeah.
And so like, and it might just be because of the lack of connection and not knowing him on a personal level. I tend to like have that reaction as well. As like, you know, how sincere is this?
Can I trust it? Yeah.
Can I trust this? Because just like everything else, I haven't been able to trust all these other things. So it's really hard to fully embrace it, because there is still a lot of pain there. But I definitely, like when I first read it this morning, I was like, wow, like this is quite a statement. You know, reading others like Matt Gilman's, and you know, people are finally starting to say things that they were unwilling to say before. And honestly, it's, after everything that's happened, it's a lot more than what I had ever hoped to see or hear
I
from
don't think
guys.
I ever expected anyone to apologize at that level. I'm going to say that. I don't think I came into that. So you got my live reaction. I'd actually not read it. I knew it was posted and I hadn't been able to get to it today. And I got to say, that is more, he owned that more deeply than I have seen anyone own it. And I don't know him, and I understand the range of reactions, but that did kind of impact me. I want to shift in a sec. Yeah, Joe, yeah, this is what I personally have seen people ask over and over and fought for it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I want to shift. We've got a couple other topics I wanted to cover, and I think we're going to also move to dropping a link in a minute to invite some people on to jump on if you guys want to come and chat with us. But I wanted to, okay, I need to look at what actually else I had on like the docket. Let me find it. What do I got? Okay. So I wanted to bring up another one. Boz put out a little tweet about the investigation, kind of acknowledging some things, and I want to read that off to you guys real quick. So this is Boz is. He's the founder of Grace. I don't think he no longer works for there. And he specializes as an attorney who specializes in clergy sexual abuse. IHOP had engaged him initially. And he was consulting for us for a really long time. The recommendation for Jim Holler came through him. Okay, so I have a few initial thoughts after having the opportunity to review the Firefly report of Mike Bickle and IHOPKC. A key question that every investigator should repeatedly ask while investigating and writing an investigative report is, who should be the primary audience of this report? The answer to that question often determines how a report is written and what is included and omitted from it. In my opinion, the primary audience should always be reported victims. That was not clear from reading the Firefly report. I also found, and a pause there. I think that the first part of the report was fine. It was okay. I think it was pretty good. It did what it needed to do. The second part of the report felt really spare. And there were some victims who it was really hard for them to be reduced to like 2 or 3 sentences. There were people who were omitted. There were people there were factual errors. There wasn't a lot of commentary in the second half, and that was really hard. And it was not written to validate what we want in an investigation, right, is the facts. But when we're writing the report, what we want is to be validating. Hey, you were abused. Hey, this was abuse. That's what we're doing. But let's comment. Second half of the report had Game of Thrones season 8 vibes.
That's pretty valid. Yeah.
So I also found the report confusing in how it was organized and unpacked. I say that as an attorney who is trained to think and argue in a logical and oftentimes linear fashion. Jim Holler is an experienced, reputable, and gifted investigator. And I will say the people who met with him, I had a chance to talk with Jim. He was gentle. He was kind. He was attentive. He felt really and what the fuck was the second half of that report?
So I want
please
to talk about the harm for a minute. So
yes, I think it's really important to talk about it. We're validating it. We want to talk about the harm too.
Yeah, and take a moment to, you've had this large traumatic experience, and there's two things that really stuck out to me in the report. Is we're taking in a lot of those stories, not all of them, but most of them are stories of some sort of sexual violation, right? And that is such a hard and painful, and often for the victim, even feeling shame around the topic, or having been gaslighted into, is this actually abuse? And you're talking about someone's personal sex life. Like, it's still victimization, so I don't want to like be misheard on that, but you're talking about something that normally is not shared.
Yeah, it's
publicly.
already very much. Yeah.
So it's this very kind of private thing. And then we're going to take this worst moment that happened to me, this horrific thing that happened to me, and then I'm going to summarize it in 3 to 4 sentences that will probably take me 3 to 4 years of therapy to resolve. But it's fine because it's a paragraph. And look, you're in there. This thing happened. And so like that was the part to me that was like harmful, of like, oh, I can't imagine someone reading 4 sentences that summarizes what's possibly the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And that's harmful.
I think that, I know that I've read other reports, and they're always going to be a little spare, but there are ways that you can do that is honoring.
Yeah.
And I think what's hard is when I looked at the report, it felt like, and again, I think we needed that report. It's a foothold, right? Jed described it as a foothold. I think that's a great description. And I think that what I had hoped to see was, this is what that represents, is like the body of trauma that was experienced. It's the body of grief of the trauma that was IHOPKC from those victims. And I expected to see it almost like lying in state for a funeral, with this sense of like dignity and finality. And instead it kind of felt like we were handed like a box full of ashes, and like had to figure out how to bury that. And so that was hard. And then I think that it just didn't, it was rushed. And this is fair right here. Holler's a competent interviewer and has expertise on sexual abuse, but he's been obstinate about receiving feedback from the survivors and advocates who tried to raise concerns about whether he understood the culture and was doing enough to communicate to survivors about things like scope. And some of the things that were communicated to him, I had a 2.5-hour conversation with him, trying to explain the culture, trying to explain bridal paradigm. And I said, this is going to be a repeated thing that was used for grooming. And then there were other things like Things that were really preventable that I think wouldn't come up in his realm of experience as a forensic interviewer. It wouldn't be part of his job. Like sending an embargoed copy to victims for them to fact check. Making clear what the levels of anonymity were that were available and what those entailed and what the choices would result in. I'm trying to think what else. There was even just letting people know, hey, if you choose to be named, your perp is not going to be named for these legal reasons, so that we have like this informed consent to what we're getting into. And
Right.
then and I talked with him and I asked him if he would allow victims a preview, and it was just dodged.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great point. So we have to wrestle with this feeling of it was a start, and then we got this. We were not told it was going to be a start. We were told he was going to investigate it in greater detail than the other, or we were not told he was going to investigate Bickle in greater detail than the other allegations.
Yeah.
And and right here, this is good. It was not clear what happens to those stories. And so people invested significantly because of their deep commitment to justice. I know people who spent hours compiling information, literal, like 15 hours on the phone with him, with other victims. I know people who sent him thousands of documents. I know people who dug up through old emails to validate other claims, and none of it was in the report. 6,000 documents and none of it was in the report. So
Yeah. And
Yep.
that was
also,
a letdown. It was
Just
a
see-
summary of public knowledge for 140K.
Yeah, literally.
yeah,
It's important because he did investigate it, and it is reliable. It is an official document we can point to, but
Mhm.
it hurts.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's also fed the the doubters, the haters, commentary on social media platforms. They're looking at this report and they're saying like, see, like we all could have said the same thing. Like this is just a jumbled mess. There's no way that any of this is real. And I mean, it gets worse than that. But
well, and what does it say about like the Tracy Bickles who are not mentioned? Like, so they're scot-free. They did nothing wrong. Like, look, I didn't make the report. And others like her that they definitely did damage and also like never made the report. And so they don't even get the hand slap. Is that it?
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think this is a great point. If it became too big, he should have slowed it down and asked for more funding and more help.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. If
Yeah.
that conversation could have happened, like, I don't know, like, and that was my reaction to the report was I was just like, I write reports, court documents for my cases. And like, I was really shocked at the level that it was written and just how sparse it was. I mean, my reports look way different for just like two kids in one family, and so it was really disappointing to see. And we talk about other reports and how they've compared to this one. It's disappointing, and it's honestly like too bad. Like it's a shame that it couldn't have been better, because it really the survivors deserve better. Those that reported, that gave their time, gave their emotional energy. It's re-traumatizing to have to go through all of that. Like, and to have it reduced to so little, it was sad to see. And I hope that, and I was really glad to see Buzz say that, publicly, and say like, yeah, this was kind of crappy.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate. That was the word that I was looking for. Really unfortunate, given the massive amount of people that this has affected.
Yeah.
I want to fact check. Someone said Tracy was in the report, and I must have missed it. But there were lots who were not. So,
And
yeah.
This is a fair point. There are people clamoring for the report to be released. Would you have been happy if there was another call for funds and time? And I'm going to say this. There were really two camps. I know you're asking honestly. You're one of my favorites, Ben. Except for your bookshelf sucks. But I was shocked. So knowing how other reports have been, I know that the FAI report, so if you know who Joel Richardson is, Frontier Alliance International, it's a fairly random ministry that I don't know what they do. Does anyone? You should look up Bourbon Jesus Forerunner Alliance International. And just for fun. And see what comes up. Google, put Audra's name in there too. So anyway, but no, they do some work overseas. I don't know if it's like mission sort of. I'm not really sure. But the point is, they're IHOP adjacent, and Joel was I'm being an asshole. Joel was a voice in advocacy pushing for this. I'm getting in trouble. Just like Susan, stop talking. But so FAI did commission a report, and they did a genuinely decent job. And they were a commission, and it was a 1-year report. That was the scope. The scope was there was one victim, and then they said they would mention other victims, but it would be like in less detail. It took a year to put that report together. There was a team of investigators, and it cost $100,000. Now, there was one victim, and we talked about this last week.
Yeah.
That to get that level of report for IHOP, baseline would have been like at a minimum $500K. However, Jim could have slowed down. And the reason that he didn't slow down was likely because he signed on to do the Brown report. And so they wanted it done by the spring because it's rumored that Bickle's going to come back in March, which is our other topic. That is word on these streets, that Bickle's going to try to reemerge, and all the Bickle bots are back. Joshua Justice is back. Bob Hartley's back. The boys are back in town, and they're pumping out false prophecies like mad. They've got AI photos. It's been a fun time. So would we have been
Susan,
happy? Yes,
he went away for a weekend, so he's better. So it's
he's
fine.
better now.
That's all it took.
But yeah,
he met a coach who coached him.
Spend some time on the mountain for a minute.
Yeah, some time on the mountain.
That's what
he
he
has a
did.
medical. He's fine. But
Is Stuart coming back? Oh
God.
I hope not, man. But yeah, so would we have been happy? I think there was a camp who would have been unhappy and who would have said, no, get it out. And those are the ones whose primary goal was to prevent, cut Mike to the cut him to the chase. What is it called? Beat him to the
punch.
Yeah, I think it's beat him to the ones who want to beat Mike to the punch and get out some sort of statement decrying him were like, let's do it fast. And the people who were like, this represents, like, Mike's going to do what he's going to do, and knew how long investigations take, were like, hey, what is this rush? This is insanity. And we're going to get something that could be discredited. And I want to put one more comment about this because I think it's important. Zero communication to manage expectations about what's normative in these investigations. Yeah, people needed to know that. If the urgency was exposing Bickle, Firefly could have released the Bickle portion first.
I agree.
So, Gracious got me. It's punch him to the chase.
Gracia.
So, yeah. Gracia knows how sayings go. If you ever need someone to tell you how does a saying go, she's your girl.
Chase him to the punch.
Chase him to the punch. That too. I'm going to drop a link for you guys. If anyone wants to hop on up here. Kelly, you think Stewart's coming back? I'm going to fucking protest that.
Ugh.
Don't love that guy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if we got to do another one, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So we don't have to get into Carly's
Oh,
post.
yeah.
But I do want to like talk about it for a second because her post got me like crocodile tears.
Yeah.
Because she was my era too, and I didn't know her well. We had a lot of mutual friends. But I loved two things she said that really stood out to me. One was she said, I'm typically a private person, and I've kind of kept this between my husband and I. And how much for victims that are private by nature to the amount of courage it takes for someone who is just by nature a private person to come forward. And then also her saying like, I put all of this out here. I used all this emotional energy and then I had to wait for months and months and months of like questions of like, am I going to get doxxed? Am I going to get found? You know, like, are people going to know? And how detailed are they going to be? And what's going to be said? And Firefly would not answer those questions for victims. They would not give a sample of what their work looked like. And they didn't tell victims ahead of time, tell me if I'm wrong, that we're going to reach out to these people who hurt you for comment.
Yeah.
And I think that was very damaging of them to have not pre-warned people that, hey, we might reach out to the person that you said did this horrible thing to you to see if they agree. Like,
yeah, there needed to be informed consent for every step of the process.
Yes.
It just simply was not trauma informed. It's not that his interview process, in terms of when you're actually with him, isn't. I mean, I didn't interview with him, but when I spoke with him, it felt fine.
Yeah, I heard mixed feelings on
you
that.
Mixed feelings? Okay.
Yeah.
But it felt like it just, and then not pausing at the end. My big issue is jumping in and doing a fucking victory lap on Twitter and just being like, oh, we have Wendy. But doing a victory lap on Twitter, that was Wendy's intro music.
I'm sorry.
It just, that was really rough. Wait, what? He told you he showed up on the abuser's doors if they didn't respond? That's a lot. I don't know how I feel about that. What? Okay.
Yeah, it's a true story. That's what I heard too. It was like, and then which ones? Did he do that for all of them? Or just like the ones that he really...
And how much did he spend on plane tickets? Like, what? I don't know. I get that feels like a big man thing to do, but it feels a little bit weird when you tell your older brother that someone did, I'm gonna punch him in the fucking face. I'm gonna take him. I'm gonna defend you, and you're like, is this about me or you? Because I don't want that. Old cop energy.
This is why it was $140,000 because he didn't use Zoom. How many did we do expense meals too? Did we track all that? Pay for that?
I don't know. I have a lot of questions. I'd like a
I will say he did not fly out to New Zealand to interview me.
Oh,
why not, Wendy? Because I would fly to New Zealand to have a conversation.
Why was I not given that option?
I would fly out there just to give you a hug for real.
Oh my God. Anytime. I'm kind of jumping on here because I just found out my daughter puked at her dad's, so they're coming home. So I'm not going to have a super long time. So I was like, I'll just jump on when I can. I'm going to have to leave and take care of a kid. But and others, but Paige is my call leader.
I was the admin, technically.
Realize that.
So I was the admin for the original Fire in the Night. I started a lot of programs and then I left them all. So I started one-day seminars and I started I don't know. I started a lot of programs. Fire in the Night was one that I started. So I was the admin. So I got a big, huge room, and they shoved all the interns in these 2 tiny rooms.
Yeah.
Because that was like how I got paid. Was like, we're just gonna give you a big room and no money. So enjoy your big room.
I just remember like getting there, and it was like the fall. And like any good New Zealander, it's like a beautiful sunny day. So I'm like opening all the windows. They just like, why are you opening the windows? I'm like, it's a nice sunny day. Like that's what you do. It's like the air conditioning won't work. I'm like, what?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was funny. Anyway.
But Fire in the Night, like all the other programs, was like build the ship at sea.
I'm having a reaction just to hearing build a ship at sea. We'd like to excuse our complete lack of planning, structure, everything.
Yeah, I literally went to a meeting that told us when people were like, hey, you say that there are going to be pizzas on Friday night, but there were no pizzas on Friday night, like 2 or 3 times in a row. And it was Nate Rogers, and he turns it round to be like, we're living at the end of the age. Like, why do you guys care about pizzas? You know, like you guys need a reality check. If you can't handle not having pizza, how are you going to handle the Antichrist? It was just like, I remember actually, Aaron being like, yeah, but you said you give us meals and you didn't. Like, let's bring it back to.
I do wonder if fasting was partly to cut costs for internships.
Probably.
We're just going to cut the food budget here for a month by just telling them we're fasting and you can have
Yeah. Yeah, they have a budget meeting. We don't have enough money for the internships. It's for another 40-day fast.
That's fine. You're going to actually fast all 6 months, so the food bill is just kind of an extra.
But then they'll add a smoothie shop years down the road so that they can make money off of the people fasting.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Joe, are you on here twice? Here we go. I had 2 Joes for a second there. All right. So, how are we feeling? What are you 2 thinking this week? Joe, you haven't said much yet. Where are your thoughts at? Oh, you're muted, Joe. No, we can't hear you. Let me see if I can figure this out.
Someone said building the ship at sea for 40 years. Yeah, I don't think we ever finished building the ship.
Yeah.
That's why I always call IHOP
very
the Titanic.
Strange raft that never quite made it.
Yeah.
Joe, why don't you pop off and pop on and see if that fixes it.
So Wendy, how did all this feel? Just kind of hearing what we're chatting about, and what stood out to you this week of all the chaotic things that dropped?
Some of it was, I was just really thankful that January is like the best month for me. It's summer, kids are off school, I got time by myself. So I'm sorry to make everyone jealous, but I felt like I was kind of ready because I knew, we knew things were coming. Having the IHOP report and the FAI report come out the same time was hard for me. I actually knew Dalton when he was at the House of Prayer in Tauranga. In fact, the House of Prayer in Tauranga was kind of for Dalton what Metro was like for Mike. If you know what I mean. Like, he was actually the best man at my wedding. Not the best man, he was one of the grooms at my wedding. So I remember when, the stuff originally dropped about Mike, and then stuff dropped about Dalton, and then I went on the fastest run I'd actually ever done in my life. Because I was like, I've got to get this anger out this way instead of to my children or to something else. So that was just it's just hard.
Yeah.
And even though almost Oh my God. Even though almost everything I read this week, I pretty much already knew
Yeah.
in some form. Like there were no big surprises. Obviously, some more victims have chosen, to make themselves known. And of course, some of them we knew of, some of them maybe we didn't. But I think it's the reality of seeing it in black and white
Yeah.
has been significant, and also just being like, when you've kind of moved on from seasons of your life and you go, that's that, and I've done some different things, and that's there.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're like, oh, this is, I am having to revisit some things, but then also telling myself, Wendy, you can revisit things if you want to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to go back 12, 13 years to when I first met Dalton and was like, we're not going to get along.
Yeah.
I never got along very well with him for different reasons.
Yeah.
And
I think there's something about those reports that is, at least for me, reading the IHOP one, it's not that we heard new things. It was that it was suddenly all together, like boom, boom, boom. And so much information was trickle down. Another article's coming out, another podcast is coming out. And so seeing it all kind of summarized in one whole place was like this death blow of like, ugh.
This might be a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like Endgame, like an Avengers Endgame, when like suddenly everyone comes together and it's like, we've been saying this and we've been saying this and we've been saying this and we've been saying this, and now suddenly everyone's like,
Here it is.
Here it all is. And obviously with the report with Mike, it was like, here it all is, and with the other part it was like that this is not by any stage all that it is. But
I think I felt that too, of like, initially it was like, ooh, I want to read every single document, and then it was like, wait, there's too many. Like there's too much. There's too many things.
And I think someone
need to balance.
Someone posted about, that, the reality of secondary trauma and the reality of, reading some of these things is traumatic. And so you need to work out for yourself, like, how much is it safe for me? And that's kind of my biggest thing I tend to say. I'm like, I get to choose what's safe for me, and you get to choose what's safe for you. And I know there are some people that knowing all the information is important for them because of that, sometimes that feeling of control, or that feeling of knowing all the information, because we've been in these environments where we were told, like, for example, we were told, oh, Dalton had this emotional, relationship with this woman.
I just say emotional affair makes me, I'm going to punch the next person.
I know. Same as, and like,
you didn't have an emotional affair just because you didn't like have intercourse. That's not what happened. Like, sexting is not an emotional affair, first of all. Let me just say.
And why is it always men who seem to have these emotional affairs?
Let's pause for a moment. How many of you have struggled to emotionally connect with a man who's your significant other and been like, hey, I'm not actually getting that from you? Like, where? How is it men who are having these when that's the primary area that they are do so poorly in? They seem to do great in an affair. No, that's not what that was. Get out of here.
Because then we don't have to call them misogynistic. We can call them overly emotional, sensitive people.
And we can also then blame their wife for not being an emotional support for them.
Yes.
And I remember at the time when we were lied to about this, and this is the first, this was the victim that was in the report. And so finding out that, like, you're told, oh, it was just this kind of, and this we want to cover, we want to do whatever, we want to honor. And it was just so much BS to cover him. And so I'm still quite mad about that. I'm mad with some people who covered for Dalton because if they hadn't covered for him, there's a lot of other harm that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And that makes me really mad. And I think my sick kid has just turned up. So
Wendy,
everybody,
I'm so
and I will
happy.
see you around.
I'm gonna drag you on early next week.
Okay. See ya.
Bye.
Love.
Oh, I could pop you off. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
All right. I'm gonna drop that link again in case any of you guys want to jump on with us. So we dropped this link like at the halfway mark. We drop it like a bunch of times for anyone to jump on with us and join in the conversation. And you get to come exactly as yourself, exactly where you're at. You don't need to filter yourself or try to fit a certain mold. You don't have to agree with me. Just on this little thing here, you've got an undecided, you've got a Christian, you've got a Janelle, who I've never actually asked her position on anything because I didn't care. I mean, I care, but it's we're sharing out of who we are, not and connecting through those shared experiences. So you get to do you and be mad or be sad or be happy or whatever.
Well, you get
Just
humans
come.
having human experiences.
And we're fucking fun. So hop on here. I'm bad enough at this that both Janelle and Paige and my tech support, who has a red beard, who can't be on at this time, all have to redirect me. They have there's a chat for it where it's like, hey, 5-minute warning on this topic. So you're in good company. So you should come. Joe, how you feeling this week?
I'm feeling like there's a lot of technical difficulties happening right now because I've heard Susan talking twice, and yeah.
Is it better now, or are you still getting an echo?
I'm not getting an echo anymore.
Okay, good.
Okay.
But I was kind of hanging out forever, and I was like, I don't think this is working. And then when I came back in, I couldn't see the chat. And
oh my gosh, that's dramatic.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what's your biggest feeling this week?
Yeah, I'm talking to Gracia. Gracia needs to get in here.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I don't see.
Where is Gracia? Gracia, get your butt in here. Do you need me to drop the link again? I'm gonna drop it again for Gracia just in case. We'll just drop it 10 times. And if one of you guys wants to jump on too, please do. You don't have to have come on here with us before. Half my friends that I have met in this time, I have met through stuff like this, random chats, and now there's some of my dearest friends. So
I'm on that list, I hope.
Yep, you are.
Gracie girl, you are not in here.
That's so
Gracia,
weird.
Medical issues.
What the frick you doing, girl? We don't even know what's going on with Gracia. In the meantime, do you guys want to have a Corey Russell moment?
Okay, I want to. Can we put the trigger warning across the bottom?
Yeah. Let me
Tech support. Where's the trigger warning?
There she is.
Yes,
Do we? How do people feel for a? There we go.
There we go.
Live react to Corey Russell.
Yeah.
I
saw the very end of whatever that was, and it was something like, yeah, I don't know. He's a big trigger for me. You can play it. I won't stop the fun. No. I'll just
play.
Close your ears if you can't take Corey. La la la.
Yeah. So Corey did a little sermon where he was addressing the feelings of heaviness. So we've got a 50-second clip that my pal Julie got for us. It took her a while to find this clip. She and I were like on this morning, and I was scrubbing through, and I gave up. And she found it.
Push in here. Push in here.
Everybody, push in.
Push in.
He's going.
No
Lightning
boundaries.
is going to hit your spirit. Lightning is going to hit your spirit.
What? So violent.
Lightning is going to hit your spirit.
He always was.
I know we're drunk on social media posts. I know we're drunk on podcasts.
Fuck you,
we're
Corey.
drunk on the newest articles.
I'm bourbon,
And the Lord
Corey.
says, hey, man, you got to be careful. That stuff will weigh your heart down. Because
No.
at the end of the day, the devil's moving through all of it to get you not praying.
Push it real good.
Lightning.
Hold on, I need to pause for the duck, the prayer duck. Whoa. Like, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since I saw the whoa. It's been a Jill Austin
Yes.
moment.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to finish out after that pause of respect. No one's drunk. Here's what pisses me off about that. Deborah's podcast came out this week. I'm not drunk on Deborah's podcast. I'm
Shame on.
I'm like,
Those are
here
sobering as
Corey.
fuck. You can't watch
Uh-huh.
that. Sorry, if you don't know, we have a game that we play that is completely inappropriate in this space. What do I do? Can someone toggle the bot on Facebook for the people on Facebook? I don't remember what it is. I think it's !Sailor Susan, right? But I can't get it to type in. Anyway, when I swear, everybody who drinks, because I accidentally swear a lot. I'm not supposed to on here. So, continuing.
God, I thank you for Gate City, and I thank you for this contingent of leaders. I thank you for every house.
So that's it. Gate City's actually going through a church split.
Is that
So
Robert
it's-
Holmes Church?
Yeah, so it's a time right now. Thank you, Anik. So it's a time right now where, if you can't see it on YouTube, the rules of the game are it just is a bot that tells the rules of the game. That's a really ridiculous game. But Gate City's having some issues. I think maybe some people are their prayer time is waning, and he's framed the entire thing as a Gethsemane moment, where if you aren't praying, you're sleeping. And your spirit is sleeping. And so the heaviness and his framing of this is the heaviness of the podcast and the news is causing people to spiritually sleep and abandon prayer. So if we could all just take a moment and register the absolute manipulation in that, where he is shaming people for it's
Being human.
for their grief. Yeah, what they're experiencing is grief, not spiritual slumber. And grief does cause us to slow down, and we should slow down and respect and honor grief.
Like, it'll make your
but-
heart heavy. It'll make
Yeah.
your heart heavy. You don't want that. You don't want
Apparently
grief. You don't want to actually sit in this pain. Like, it's the emotional manipulation, I feel like, is so subtle. But like, everyone is in there is like, yeah, I don't want to be weighed down. I want to have the joy of the Lord. I don't
Right.
want to stop even for a second to be like, oh my gosh, Deborah freaking Perkins here from day one. Like,
Yeah, sit with her in that grief.
I don't want to feel that. Oh, I'm weighed down. Oh, I shouldn't be weighed down. It's like, it's so manipulative. It's so like, if you're feeling empathy, if you're feeling sorry, if you're feeling sorrow, like, you're in the wrong. You shouldn't be feeling that way. And it's disgusting. It is disgusting. Corey,
It goes along really well with Misty's entire "How far will you let me go? How abandoned will you let me be?" And there's no acknowledgement in there of human limitations, exhaustion, burnout,
Right.
needs for other things. They don't make space for that.
Has Corey said anything in the last year?
He
Has
made
he addressed his community, anything other than that? Like, one, and something was going on with Brian Kim. Don't Corey and Brian still work together?
Yes.
What's going on there? Like,
yeah, there's some spiritual abuse allegations that haven't come public yet, but that I've heard whispers of. I don't know how to turn off the trigger warning.
what I feel like we're going to hear next in this prayer meeting is we will not talk about trauma. We will not let ourselves be weighed down. We will not we'll just find the joy of the Lord in this time of suffering and sorrow. And it's like,
well, and what's hard is, so what he wants people to find is travail. And he talks about earlier in that meeting, he talks about wanting his wife to be afraid he's going to die when he's in travail. So he brings up the story of this, I don't know, some revivalist who's in travail. And he's like, the wife, he's in travail for 48 straight hours. Oh, the wife wants them to, it freaks out. And she's afraid he's going to die. And she's basically having a trauma response to the level of his uncontrolled emotional, whatever. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I want that. I want Dana to be afraid I'm going to die. And I'm like, okay, you want your emotional whatever, to that. I mean, that's hard.
Here's why.
And then,
sorry.
So that's just his framing. And I'm gonna pull up a comment real quick.
This is why Corey is so upsetting to me. I have this memory of him being like, what I want when I'm in my old age on a rocking chair on a porch is for the name of Jesus to just make tears fall down my face. And I was like, I have that now. I have that now listening to Venable and Alan Hood and all of you guys preaching the beauty of Jesus. I can make myself cry. That's all we're doing here. That's all we're trying to do here is get our emotions to a place where we're so tender that we cry at the very name of Jesus. What about my bills? What about my needs? What about my depression? What about my loneliness? What about all of these kids starving? What about the abuse? What about the way you're running this? I just see it so much more clearly now than I did at the time. And it's so abusive. It is it's wicked. It is egregious and it's wicked. And it's so easy to do to people under 30.
And when you finally get the vulnerability, courage enough to go and ask for help and say, these are my unmet needs. These are my unpaid bills. I need food. I mean, the reaction being, if you prayed harder, if you love Jesus more, where's the sin in your life? And it's people struggle. That's not sin. That's not necessarily doing something wrong. Disasters happen. Did people do something wrong that were in South Carolina this year? I mean, should they have prayed harder? I mean, there's a house of prayer there. How did that happen?
I mean, I think there's just this idea that you can, tying to that, Gracia, he says no victims. You're like, no victims in Jesus' name. Oh, we fixed the victimization by saying no victim. We declared it. Now it's fine because a man went up and prayed it. And then you got here, charismatics believe one prayer will snap off trauma. And that
they do.
That was the profound part of our experience of IHOPKC, of Living Waters, of all of it. Yes. Hey, come up here and I'll pray for you. You'll have a cathartic experience that's contrived, that I brought you to a place of emotional vulnerability. You stepped into it, and then I screamed, lightning is going to hit you in your face. And who said it? How many people were physically pushed to the ground? So you're in a vulnerable place. You are pushed to the ground, and then you are told that violence is an encounter with God that breaks off your trauma. And that is one of my primary issues with the way that this place handles trauma, is it is approached with a violence that is further traumatizing.
Yeah, right. It sets you up for such failure in your therapy journeys afterwards too, because you have an expectation of instantaneous change. You're not prepared to do the work. You're not prepared to make lifestyle changes, mindset changes. You think you're going to then walk into a therapy office and just, it's all going to fall off of you. And that's not how the heart works. That's not how the brain heals itself. That's not how trauma works. And I know that many of you have probably already heard this before, but it's relevant to this. First time that I had a leadership meeting with Living Waters, and I asked Tracy Bickle, what do we do when we're doing the call to prayer? And all the leaders are supposed to prophesy over the people in Living Waters. And I'm like, well, what do we do if we don't have a prophetic word? What do we do if Jesus doesn't say anything to me? And she literally laughed at me and said, we're not actually prophesying. And like gave me like a list of phrases that we were supposed to be using and words that trigger tears, things that are emotional. It wasn't your fault. Things like that we were supposed to be saying to people to make them cry. Because she said, if you can get them to a vulnerable place where they cry, then Jesus comes in and does the work. You don't have to have an authentic prophetic word. And treated me like I was stupid for thinking that they were real. And so all of the healing I thought I got in Living Waters already suddenly became invalidated. And I didn't trust not only that, but just the encouraging words friends would give me, or the validation I'd be given by people, because suddenly I realized this was all fake. And that for me was like the first crack in the wall I saw at IHOP.
Well, yeah. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I loved what you were saying, just championing the idea of like, when a church person comes into my office and they sit on my couch and they say, I'm broken and I need to be fixed. And I this is always my first conversation. I say, what if you're not broken?
Yep.
Like, what if everything you need is actually within you to heal? And
hey, let's get New Age page
for that. What?
Let's get New Age page. God didn't design us with something inside us that could heal us. It's always got to come outside us from the big man in charge. So I'm going to go ahead and push.
Right. Yeah. Because that is like, our body is made to heal, and but we don't heal quickly. And I always, with people, like if someone were to come into my office and say, I came out of a cold, I would say, I just want you to know that this is years of work. Yeah. This isn't days of work. And I'm very honest with people up front, because they do think they're going to sit through 6 sessions with me. And then they're going to get really overwhelmed because they're going to realize, oh my gosh, I have so much to do. Yeah. And realizing that therapy is one step at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time, one breath at a time.
I want to read something just to counter. I really loved that comment by Jessica where she said charismatics believe that trauma can be like broken off in one prayer session. Yes. And I want to read this to you because I feel like it's so validating to hear it. As throughout this process, I've been like, is something wrong with me? And Paige, I've talked with you about this. Is there something wrong with me that I keep coming back here? Like, why the fuck am I in this community that I walked away from 17 years ago? And I'm right back here with all of you. And this, I every morning, Daling, where she tweets every morning. And when I wake up, I reflexively check my Twitter. And so it's been really nice because I have my alerts turned on for her, and I get her first every morning. And it's been like a sort of reverse devotional.
So if you don't know, Diane Langberg is probably the leading expert on trauma therapy for spiritual abuse.
Yeah. So one of the characteristics of dealing with trauma is the repetitious nature of that work. Survivors will say the same things over and over. They will be repetitious in dealing with their emotions. They will repeat their losses again and again. Expect it. Learn to sit with it. The magnitude of trauma is so great that repetition is necessary. The mind cannot imagine what happened. It cannot hold such a thought. Bearing the intensity of emotions is impossible, and so the feelings must be tried on again and again. Be patient, and then be patient some more. Telling and retelling helps to reduce the memory to size. And that was so validating to me to read. Like, there's a reason you're telling these stories over and over. And there's a reason that, yeah, exactly. Like, get over it already. No, what we experienced was a significant trauma. It was a big fucking deal. And there's a reason you can't get over it. And it's not because something in you is broken. It's because the magnitude of it was really that big, and it was really that hard.
Yeah, and I want to clarify. So there's a difference between someone who has a trauma, which is a singular event, and complex trauma. And complex trauma is the idea of an extended period of time of repetitive types of similar traumas, and the memories become buried like a landmine. And so I always say that complex trauma therapy is like trying to waltz through a landmine, because you don't know where the triggers are, and you don't know when you're going to hit one, and you don't know when you're going to fall on one, because they're not, all in one little pile like they would be with a trauma. And so that's why different people are triggered by different things and different experiences, and sometimes they don't even know why, because it was so complex.
And,
Yeah.
and while we're like in this space, right, like over and over again, sometimes I'll have the same thing come up, but I'm finding a new pain
Yeah.
in it. And other times it's that I am discovering something that I didn't know I had pain over.
Yeah.
And so I've been thinking a lot about, like, okay, why am I still in this space? Like, why is this serving me? Is this helpful? As I'm like, hey, everybody come to open spaces. Like I'm actively doing that. And then I'm like, should I be going back here? Is this good? Is this healing me? And I landed on yes. And there was a really great, I'm going to bring Diane Langberg in again. It's like, why not bring Diane into open spaces, man?
We should just have her on.
We should try. We should give it a shot. Maybe hey, we're part of the weirdest fucking cult ever. Want to come on a random
I want to co-host that one though, please.
She's speaking at Restore right now.
Diane Langbert on. You can come on.
She's hanging out with,
like a dream.
She's hanging out with Tammy and Elizabeth right now at Restore, so she knows who we are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Maybe we can should put in a good word. All right, I'm gonna show you this one more that I was thinking about this week because it tied to my own experience this week or this month, not this week. I can manage my life. I can find this. Okay.
So
she says, I didn't pull it up. Good job, Susan. Here we go. All right. Choosing words, saying words, and having someone listen and honor them helps to strengthen the survivor of abuse to face his or her feelings. It also connects them to a caring person they can then trust to bear the terrifying feelings with them. And for me, that was this moment that clicked, where it was like, why has it been important to me to be in this space? And I had this experience a week or two ago where I realized there was an element of my own abuse that I had never been able to talk about because I just didn't have a person who understood. And when I did find someone who could hear it, it was something that felt too terrifying to tackle. And I think that's a lot of this with the cult. Like, even just saying I was in a cult feels really terrifying for me. It brings up a lot of feelings. I feel like a fucking idiot. I feel like, will it ever be better? Can I manage normal life? Will I ever be able to function well? How am I going to teach my children to navigate a world that I did not learn to navigate the way regular people do? And so there's a lot of feelings there, and I have CPTSD. Like, I got a lot of things. I got ADHD. I got OCD. I have so many letters. There's like a lot of letters happening over here, and having someone safe who can kind of like hold your hand when you're walking into that experience and be there with you so you don't have to face it alone is so unbelievably healing, because I think that the nature of trauma to begin with is that you are terrified and alone.
Yes.
And so there have been moments in this where for the first time, I'm connected with safe people who also understand, where I don't have to teach them the language. Because that's what's really hard is it's like speaking another language.
Yeah.
And that's where I was like, that's why I keep coming back to this space. That's why I'm drawn. It's not that I'm drawn to the dysfunction. It's that because there's this fear of like, you can't find healing at the feet of the person who abused you. Right. And that's not what's happening here.
Yeah. Well, neurologically, you're hardwired for spaces like this, Susan. Because in trauma therapy, part of doing trauma therapy is being able to go back into a story and bring safe people to help you walk through and give you what you should have had in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And open spaces is one of those options that has created that for people to come back and tell their story with someone safe to tell them what they needed to hear, but someone within that community that's capable to understand the depth and breadth of what you went through and be able to look at you like you've done for me, Susan, and say, that's abuse. That's trauma. That is not okay. Gracia, what happened to you is absolutely not okay. It was not safe. And it was a horrific, horrific thing that they did to you. And holding those places for people to bring in the justice that they so desperately needed in that moment because they were alone. And now there is a group of people saying, I will stand with you in the places of pain, and I will acknowledge with you that this was not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this was wrong. And I'm so sorry.
Also, the validation that comes with knowing other people were hurt by the same things as you, because I feel like with complex PTSD, you tend to downplay everything. Like it wasn't that bad. It was a little thing. Yeah, it happened every day. But when I look back at the things that have affected my life and my healing journey, guys, I'm getting so emotional here. Sorry.
Love you, Gracia.
It's the little things that have hurt me the most. It's the environments that have hurt me the most. And I can't count the number of times when people have shared part of their story with me and compared, saying, well, I didn't go through what you went through. And it's like, no, like there's no comparison in trauma. We don't have to compare to each other at all. And frankly, that incident that everybody knows me for is not the most traumatic thing I went through at IHOP by any means, or in my life. Like it's way down the list. It's the most shock value, and it's what you'd think would be the hardest. But that was one day of my life. I lived 700, 900 days of my life having complex trauma at IHOP, just like the rest of you. We all lived in that. It was traumatic. We don't have to compare it. We don't have to have one big moment that has shock value to it. All of our stories have a lot of trauma in them, and just being able to sit with other people who also were affected by maybe the little things, by the day-to-day things, and realizing that those little things weren't actually that little at all. Being able to do that together is pretty fucking beautiful. Sorry, language.
And reminding yourself that comparison is also a trauma response, right? If I can be convinced that your trauma is bigger than mine, then maybe I can hold space for what happened to me. And so if that is you and you are in that comparison mode, it's really your body's way of trying to say, I don't know if I can tolerate my own pain, so I need to make it smaller.
Wow.
Have you guys noticed the amount of discourse? And I don't follow like the Lance Wallnows or like Daystar, but like, I remember this from IHOP and I'm still seeing it now. One prayer session is worth X amount of hours in trauma. This is worth so much time in therapy. Like I remember Wes Hall saying that from the stage during the awakening.
Sean Bowles said that shit recently.
Right. And it's so troublesome to me because like remember thinking during my time at IHOP that like I needed therapy, I wanted counseling, I wanted to talk with someone more deeply about things, and being made to feel like if you need more, like you were talking about, Paige, like if you need to go through that years-long process, if you need a therapist, like there's something wrong with you, that you didn't walk out your healing.
Yeah.
You know, that you didn't just keep coming back every Sunday to the prayer line, like that you needed more help with your real trauma. Like there was so much shame around that.
Yeah, but there was something wrong with us. We were in a cult.
Right.
And
But it
that's
was
the
like,
point that was like, let's be dismissive of what's actually wrong. Let's again gaslight in a whole different way by suggesting this is the equivalent of therapy.
It still makes me so angry how they would have these conferences and they're telling us to come and be a part of something bigger than ourselves, and the language that they were using. You can be this super Christian, you can be special, you can have a place in glory for all eternity, you can belong to a family, you can do something that means something that matters. That language appeals to the most, I don't want to say broken, that's not the right word, but like
I think our deep desires, our deepest desires, and they're good desires.
Vulnerable.
The people that have sometimes those biggest holes in their lives, the people that, you know, might not have the strongest family connections, or the people that are most needing of that love, the most vulnerable people, really. That's who that drew in. And they were intending to draw in the vulnerable. And they did. They drew in the most vulnerable, the already traumatized, the people that needed a safe landing space. They advertised themselves as that safe landing space. And we came. And they hurt us in that vulnerable state. And so for a lot of us, it's not even just healing from the trauma of IHOP. It's healing from the trauma of thinking you were going to be safe, getting there, and then being re-traumatized. And now you get to what maybe feels like a safe space, whether that's a relationship or a church or a community or a therapist. And now it feels safe. And that safe feeling actually triggers you, because you had that once before when you came to IHOP, and you can't trust that feeling anymore.
Yeah. That's like when I had my first and only, admittedly, EMDR session, and I'll say, like, the therapist was not ready for the kind of trauma that I was bringing to the table. And so, but the first thing that she said in the session was, okay, now I want you to think of a safe space that you can, you know, go to. And I went into a full-blown panic attack. I lost it. I couldn't breathe. My whole body was shaking, and I was just like, nothing is safe. Nothing is safe. Literally nothing. Like everything that was supposed to be safe, every person that was supposed to be safe, they were all dangerous places and people. And now you're asking me to come up with a safe space, and that's absolutely not possible. And I think like that was the most damaging for me, just the level of betrayal that had happened in that process.
Yeah.
For complex trauma people, if that's you, that's not a good question. So a better question is, have you ever had a moment of peace? And when was that in your life? And can I grow on that peace? And where is it at in your body? And then can I make that peaceful place safe within me that no one can see and no one can touch? And so I can create a safe space within that is untouchable by anyone on the outside.
Yeah. I had this really interesting experience that was, I think it was like a turning point for me, where I hit that same place you're talking about, Janelle, of nothing is safe. Who can I trust? How do I know when someone, especially because when you're in relationships, like the people that you love, they're going to be imperfect. And so how do you differentiate between, hey, this person is imperfect and hurt me, but they're not necessarily unsafe. We're in repair. We're in process, or they're safe to this point and maybe not in this area, because we can have measure safety. We can have, wow, Joe.
I'm trying to follow the chat. I can't do it on my laptop.
No, I'm just playing with you. And that kind of thing. And so I was like, how will I ever be safe again? Like, even if I were safe, how would I even fucking know?
Yeah.
And complete meltdown. And I had this sudden, like, internal knowing of, you are safe. You can be safe for yourself.
Yeah.
And it, like, I think it was like, it was a really weird moment. And I thought on it for like 5 years because it would come up to me and I didn't know what it meant. I was trying to find it. And I think it was that thing you're describing, Paige, of just finding a sense of safety within yourself, a moment of safety, a place of safety. And then, and how do I build on that? How do I access it and find it and find my way back to it? I was going through some grief last week and I was afraid to, like, even engage it because of my past experiences with when trauma comes up. I think it re-engages that feeling of, like, is anything safe? And I think we're having that continual experience with these news articles coming up where, even like the article we talked about at the beginning of this of, wow, that's surprising. That's a betrayal. How do I feel safe with someone and don't know that they're hiding anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And leader betrayal, institutional betrayal. We had the investigation that went kind of, and so there were two pieces. There was one was this thing that I've started to carry with me where it's like I can go into situations that are gray and not know all the answers and make a call and say, okay, I can go into this situation. I think I have enough information. And if it goes wrong, I'm the safe person who can figure out what to do next, whether it's ask for help, whether it's grounding myself and listening to myself, moving on, whatever. I can navigate this. And if I get hurt, the second piece is I can find my way back out again.
Mm-hmm.
And that I can find my way back out again was a piece that a friend said to me this week or last week or whatever, where I said, I'm really afraid to engage this. And she's like, have you taken a moment? Like, have you felt this yet? And I was like, no, I haven't, because I don't want to. I don't fucking want to go there. I'm afraid of how big it is. I'm afraid of how big that grief is going to be. And that goes back to that thing that Dan Langberg that post that I said where the feelings are really terrifying when we're dealing with stuff because they're so big and you feel like lost in them, right?
Yeah.
And you feel like you're going to be swallowed whole. And that's what I was feeling in that moment. And she was like, you're going to be okay. You'll find your way back out.
Yeah.
And that to me was huge.
That's such a big fear in trauma work that if I were to really truly try to feel, that I would completely lose it and I would never come back. And so it is about that internal place of finding safety. And I hear Tiffany's post of like, I don't even know if I can find safety. And so I always start with peace in people. Can I find a calm place? Even in my little pinky, can I find just a tiny amount of calm in my body, any part at all? And then you can co-regulate with people. Like sometimes it's, can I hug my pet? Like for me, that'd be my dog. And can I borrow his calm? So if I can't find calm in my own body, can I borrow calm from someone? And so it is about finding those ways of like, can I begin to find a Taco Bell or find all the chats about tacos is funny. What can I find that will create that space for me to begin to believe that there is a healing part of me? Because that fear of if I start to feel I won't be able to stop is so real and so big.
And when do we have time to really tackle how big a lot of that grief is, how big those feelings are in our days? I mean, we're busy. We have kids or jobs or, you know, I mean, I don't think a single person in this right now would raise their hand and say, I have a dull, boring life and I'm not busy at all. I mean, life is crazy. When do we have time to sit down and cry for 3 hours? What I've had to do in just the last year and a half of major grief of both my grandparents dying and then my dad dying and, you know, going through all this stuff with IHOP all at the same time is I've had to just take my car rides and put on music that's going to help me get to that emotional space to feel what I need to feel and let myself have a very dangerous car ride, frankly, because I just sobbed the whole time on the road.
We're going to have a talk after this about your car drives.
Don't pass me on the highway. It's been really healing to be able to just take those like 20, 25 minutes. I'm going to cry. I'm going to feel what I need to feel today. And then I'm done. And I put a limit on it. And then a couple of days later, when I have my next longer drive, okay, we're going to do 25 minutes and then we're done. Just so I know I'm not going to have to go to this place for 3 hours for the rest of the day, for the rest of the week, setting that limit so I know I'm going to let myself feel this, but there's a hard stop. And then I don't have to, but I'm going to come back to this has been really just helpful for me.
Yeah.
And pivoting just slightly to a reminder I want to give everyone, breathing, really important, really easy to forget. Everyone's had a really stressful week this week. Can I just give like a really friendly reminder of like, you release the cortisol when you exhale fully. And when we don't fully exhale, we're building that up in our systems and we're getting more stressed and more panicked. And I have noticed this week, I'm not kidding, popped blood vessels on my face because when I get stressed,
I've had those ugly cries. Yeah.
No, not even crying. I'm just going through my life and I'm this week's, you know, been a lot for everyone. And I'm just forgetting to breathe. Literally, like I'm catching myself and being like, that's right. Like we do that instead of it being
hold my breath a lot unconsciously because I'm being on edge. Like it's awful.
Where's that like natural, like I'm supposed to be able to do this subconsciously, right? But this week it's not been subconscious. Every breath is conscious. So if any of the rest of you are also forgetting to breathe, please remember to do that. You'll feel better. It's really important, simple function.
I've heard that drinking water and eating is also helpful. So I just wanted to.
Okay, we're not getting into conspiracy theories, Susan.
Okay, well, my bad. But I will say, I love Gracia that point. I really love that point of manageable grief, and it's not something that I ever So I think that we have been. So I have a friend who approaches it like that. That was the first time I ever saw someone do it, where they were like, I don't have time to engage this emotion now, but I let myself have space. And I watched her do it for a couple years and I was like, damn, that is different. And at first I thought I was like, wow, she is type A as fuck. Like I was like, I do not relate to you and I'm mildly judging you. In my head, I'm kind of laughing about it. Like I was just like, oh yeah, you can go for your cry space now. And I hope she doesn't hear this up. No, I'm just playing. She's gonna listen to this and be like, Susan, let's have a talk. No, but I realized that it was that is so caring to yourself to look at your capacity and also acknowledge your need to feel grief and set boundaries around it. And so like this week, like it was really hard. I knew I was going to do open spaces on Wednesday. And a friend who kind of knew was like, hey, have you felt your feels yet? And I was like, no, I did not. And encouraged me to kind of take a moment to do that in a measured way before I came on Wednesday. And I did, but I had a hard stop. I had to become done. And I took a minute and was like, I actually read Boz's statement and just acknowledging that it wasn't perfect in a really measured way, that the report wasn't perfect, and that was hard. And cried for like 45 minutes, and then I had to go. But knowing like, hey, here's how much time I have, really made it feel manageable. And that's something that I think when you have this magnitude of grief that we've got, and I want to say, like, we just do have, if you were in this fucking cult, if you were in another charismatic space where there's complex grief that layered on top of your other grief, of whether it's sexual trauma or relational trauma or spiritual trauma, those things layer because they mirror each other, or they echo each other. And so suddenly everything reminds you of everything, and it's so hard. And being able to say, I get to feel this, and letting it out, it's like a dam. I mean, literally letting it out like a dam is not, it's not a bad thing, because it's impossible to feel it all at the same time. That's not, you don't need to expect that of yourself. But I think in charismatic spaces, we were encouraged into this sort of unhinged state where you literally get yourself into, like, I mean, I had friends who went into psychosis, you know?
Yeah.
And that you abandon yourself. How abandoned how far will you let me go? How abandoned will you let me be? Yeah. No, I'm going to keep myself within a realm that's safe for myself and caring for myself.
Yeah. So some of what you're talking about is the ability to compartmentalize. And that requires an internal boundary. And so some people who had especially childhood trauma are better at it because they had to survive. And then other people really struggle with that boundary of, how do I put it away? And how do I contain that? Yeah. And so, like, if you need containment strategies, you can Google, like, how do I learn to compartmentalize or contain trauma? And then, thinking about, like, holding our breath, that is a trauma response, right? Because it's literally us saying something is happening so severe that breathing is actually not essential for living in this moment.
Yeah.
Because what I'm experiencing is so terrifying that even trying to live is hard.
Okay, listen, sometimes I'm concentrating on a video game page, I think.
I was going to say, my body will literally forget to breathe and not consider it a natural function, but I have never once forgotten to put a taco in my mouth. Not even once.
Right.
Damn straight, Gracia. Damn straight.
Yeah.
Can we also, like, touch on, and if this is, like, I don't know, a bad idea or a bad topic or something, then please just, like, misdirect. I don't know. How it's been, like, a really nuanced process of just walking through this last year just with each other, in the sense that we're all going through so much and we all want to support each other. We're all empathetic, caring, kind human. I mean, you guys are the best community. Like, there's nothing better than you guys. It just isn't. But, like, we're all going through so much. And having to figure out, like, what our boundaries are with each other, having to, what is that phrase of a boundary being the distance I need in order to love me and you at the same time. And I think so many of us have had to really figure out good boundaries, and then also figure out other people's boundaries not being them not loving you, and just like doing that as a community kind of all together. Like it's really been like a crash course on good boundaried community.
Yeah. Well, it's like learning how to relate to each other outside of a cult and outside of a cult mentality. Like, because we're all like relearning ourselves and life, and now it's learning how to relate to each other when we've learned, when we've known each other as these other versions of people within a cult, and operating within a cult and navigating life within a cult. And so now it's a different side of us that we're learning. And it's messy, but it's beautiful. And I love that we get to see that happening for all of us, you know, being in our different journeys and different parts of the journey. It's really amazing to be able to witness that. Like, and it's so true with the, you know, the boundaries. Like, I honestly, you know, since the report came out, like I wasn't able to emotionally like process the weight of it. Like I was like in this headspace of like, okay, like how can we take care of everyone else and make sure that, you know, everybody has their needs met and that we're going to make it through the week and be okay. And I think typically like I respond to injustice like with anger. The anger comes first, and it takes a while to get behind that anger into the grief part of it. And I finally reached that this morning when I was like ugly crying to my professor this morning because I was like, I am so behind on my assignments because this has been so overwhelming for me. I've just been in this like functional freeze state. And so I was like apologizing to her, but also letting her know like, hey, like, you know, this is kind of happening right now. Like I'm a cult survivor and it's been really tough. And she was like, listen, like I have watched every documentary on Netflix that has ever been about a cult. And she was like, and I have cried for every single one. And I just want you to know that I get it. Like, I can't imagine how hard it was for you to like, one, grow up in that environment, and two, survive that environment, and then three, get out of that environment and try to figure out like how to live life after that. And like, I just lost it. Like, that was the moment that I was able to just really tap into the grief and the feelings, because getting that validation from someone on the outside was huge. Like, she's like, hey, I don't know all the details and like what exactly happened, but like, I'm here with you in this. And that's fucking hard. And I'm so sorry. And it's going to be okay. And I'm here to help you. And so like being able to have that space to really like access those emotions. And, you know, after she ended the call, like I gave myself like an hour to just like be on the couch and just wrap myself up in a blanket and like not do anything. And my phone was like blowing up from all these, you know, chats and everything going on between school and everything else. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to sit here in this, like, just feel it and like breathe through it. And that's really all it takes. Just being able to access that and sit in it and breathe through it and remind yourself like, I'm okay and I'm safe and I'm here now. And look at this beautiful life that I have now. And the love that I'm surrounded by, and this beautiful community that we've been able to and look at this build after IHOP. So yeah, that was my morning.
Yeah. I love that.
I'm sure this will be very controversial, but one of the things I've been doing the last couple months to help kind of cope with the stress and grief of everything is going into sauna cold plunges where you go into a 210-degree sauna, beautiful like Norwegian wood and everything over a lake, and you get so hot the water starts to sound good. I'm in frozen Minnesota, and then you go out in often negative degree weather. Yesterday was negative 25, or no, it was like 25-mile-an-hour wind. It put it at like negative 17 or something, and you jump into a hole in the lake and you sit there for like 3-4 minutes, and like autoimmune stuff gets a lot better from doing that, and like body pain gets a lot better from doing that. But also like, okay, I know I probably sound crazy to a lot of you, but genuinely sitting in that water, you have to just deep breathe and go into a complete calm to get through. If you panic, if you freeze up, you're just gonna like get so cold and have to get out. But the more I've done it now, the more I get in the water, and it's like this calm takes over. And one, you're just trying to survive. You don't have the capacity to be anxious at that time. So it like snaps me out of my anxiety. And then I'm deep breathing. And when I get out of that water, after I've been in there for that 3-4 minutes, I remember that I can do anything for a couple minutes. I can make it through anything. And you feel so empowered. And it's almost like it gives me just like a clean slate when I leave. The anxiety's gone because dang, I was cold and just trying to survive. My body feels better. And I'm reminded I actually don't have to just lay down and be the weak, the vulnerable woman that so long I have tried to make me believe that I was. Like, I have that power. I have those abilities. And I know that probably just sounds like a crazy way to tune myself into it, but it works for me. So find what works for you.
I've heard those are like super beneficial for like stress and immune system. And
I have never in my life had a normal cold. I've never been sick for less than 2 weeks at a time. I mean, I get sick for months at a time for my autoimmune stuff. It's awful every time. Even a little cold, I'm out for like a month. And that's just like a small one for me. Ever since I started doing this regularly, I've gotten sick twice. One was for 3 days and one was for 4 days. I was like, is this what a normal cold is for people? And I can't prove the correlation, but yeah, nothing's ever worked before. So
there's a lot of research and science behind it, what you're describing, because of what it does to the vagus nerve. But you have to be in good health to do it. So please talk to your doctor before you go jump in a freezing lake. Because not
yes,
everyone.
This is not my endorsement for reckless behavior.
Yeah, because not everyone is capable of that. However, I'm a big fan of infrared sauna, the same idea, and a cool shower.
Yes, I was going to say cool showers work too.
A cool one is nice. You can go hot and cold on the thing.
Yeah.
But those are like shocking things for your nervous system to help regulate. So you're not wrong. That's a great method. Just find the version that works for your body.
I want to pivot real quick because Tiffany jumped on.
Tiffany!
And I think everybody loves Tiffany. And I want to just give her a chance to bring up a topic. Talk to us, Tiffany. Talk to us.
I have a couple like comments real quick. Gracia, when you were talking about the busted blood vessels in your face, I don't know if you can see it or not, but that has been all this week. It's so real, like not recognizing the trauma that we're carrying in our body all the time. Our body's like, yo, still here. You might be an expert compartmentalizer and minimizer of all things, but your body doesn't lie. And so when you said that, I was like, yes, got it. Yep. And also, Paige, like, I just wanted to reiterate the importance, because I know that you guys threw my comment up there. I was actively holding my 5-year-old as he was sleeping, watching just his innocence and the purity and just the beauty of what it means to be untainted and like just not hurt by everything that we've gone through. Yeah. And like you had mentioned, borrowing peace from another, like for all of us that have sat in years and years and years of questioning, not just how we think, why we would even think to question, like why, literally questioning and gaslighting ourselves because of how much we have been gaslighted by parents or spiritual authorities or spouses or whatever that looks like, the constant assault on our own autonomy. It is hard as we're navigating the many elements of complex PTSD, because I think we all, to some level, probably have some of that. The longer that you've been either at IHOP or in abusive environments, it just begets one on top of another. And the power that it is to be able to borrow that piece from another, I think, has been my greatest lifeline. Because have I been able to trust myself in certain things? Hell yes. And I'm so grateful for that. And has it been incredibly hard at other times? Yeah, that's probably more the truth, more often than not. And finding one person or a moment or the sound of a stream that you walk by, finding something outside of myself to internalize and to take as my own, the gift of the hug of my new husband, the feeling of my head in his chest, compared to the 12 years of abuse that I had prior to that relationship, is like been my lifeline, just borrowing that peace and that security from another. And I think that's honestly the power of this community. I haven't, because of kind of what you alluded to, Gracia, of having to figure out where our boundaries are with one another and all of our individual processing as all this stuff is happening. I've not really been able to tune in to open spaces much, but the few times that I have, that is the beauty of this space, of being able to borrow being seen, being able to borrow being known, being able to borrow the feelings and the validity that comes from going, oh, it really was that fucked up. And it's really okay that I'm struggling right now. That has been the beauty of open spaces. And so I just wanted to pop on and say thank you, guys. Thank you for continuing to create this environment that people like me can pop in and pop out of when I do have the bandwidth to engage and share and process together. So just thank you guys for being here and for being that safe place that many people don't necessarily always have in their personal life.
Yeah.
I would really like to say, since I haven't said very much, listening to all of you talk about your trauma responses from this week specifically, maybe through like November and December and January of last year, I did a lot of weeping. I did a lot of falling apart every day. I did a lot of like really difficult trauma moments. I wouldn't say I felt numb this week, but like, Grace, I remember telling you there's an investigation happening. Like, I didn't even know anybody was like trying to make one happen. And I had sort of entered this space of like, this is all we get. All we get is open spaces. All we get is heaven bent. All we get is some sprinkling in the star. Like, this is the best it's going to be. And it was a lot, but like, just kind of my attitude around this report is like, this is all we're going to get. And after I talked to Jim, I had some concerns, and I didn't want to voice them because I felt like we were throwing our weight behind this guy as the advocate community. And I didn't want to be like, stop everything. And I wasn't that concerned, but I was like, this is not trauma informed.
Yeah.
Or we're missing. Like, it's okay to disagree with other people. Like, you don't have to feel like you have to keep your voice quiet because people disagree, whether we're wrong or you're wrong or there's a combination. Like, it's okay to be wrong. And I think there's a lot of pressure, particularly with like posting on X and making statements and all that kind of stuff of like, you can't be wrong. People are going to take apart every single word you say. Actually, we do get to be wrong. We get to be wrong and we get to make it right. We get to be wrong and we get to fix our relationships with people when we do mess up. And we're imperfect. We're learning how to be good advocates, good friends. We're learning how to be good humans and heal. And we're healing from complex trauma together while trying to help each other heal. I mean, we're going to mess up on the way and we're going to get things wrong. I actually, shockingly to everyone, have maybe like gotten something wrong before too, like once or twice, like, I don't know, maybe. No, I get things wrong.
No, never, Gracia.
Constantly
Never in your
wrong.
life.
Genuinely probably get things wrong more than anybody else here. Truly, always messing up. Anyways, so like it's okay to express an opinion. Like you don't have to be under the fear of like, well, this might undermine whether people are doing. Well, so what? You get to have your concerns. Like you get to have an opinion.
Yeah.
That mentality of like, for all of the speaking up that I have done, of like, I don't want to speak up or be a wet blanket, but I live with, and I don't know how to say it other than guilt. I live with the guilt of not speaking up sooner. And so again, I'm like having another moment of, as someone who has worked in mental health for a long time, as someone who's worked with folks experiencing trauma for a long time, as someone who has had at least some, maybe a lot, pretty extensive trauma training, knowing that frustration of like, it's almost like a repeat of like, it's never good enough. Like that was so much of the, like, you forgot about this, you didn't do that, you hurt this person that way. Like no matter how hard you try, you would still re-traumatize somebody. And so it was like, you know, I kept and even just being so confused and overwhelmed by this last year. I got off the phone with him and I was like, I was just like, this is not, it didn't feel thorough. I don't remember if he told me I was being recorded or not. And I just was like, I've been feeling this week like I did the first week this all broke. Like I know people are suffering. I know people are having trauma responses. Like, and I feel helpless to help them. And I feel like I want to throw my weight into rooms and conversations and say, like, you are going to keep hurting people. Like the numb hands, the panic attacks, the inability to breathe, like the physical things we're all going through right now, like are a result of people's actions. And I'm really having a hard time for not like speaking up about that because I'm so protective of this community. And so instead of like falling apart this week, because like I had to go to work, I had things to do. I was just like, I can't engage with this like I was. But I'm just like, again, feeling like when I was in the nonprofit that I was in, there was a constant feeling of just like, it was so easy to re-traumatize a traumatized person. And I feel like that's the situation that we're in. It's so easy to re-traumatize people and like watching people just weep over like, I thought there was going to be at least a paragraph and I'm not even in this report. Like I'm really upset about that and just going, but I'm also was like really afraid that people were going to be like, okay, this is over. And it doesn't sound like that's the response. It sounds like people are like, this is like Jed was saying, this is a foothold. This is a crack in the door.
Yeah.
But it's $140,000 crack in the door. So it just feels overwhelming. Like, what now? You know, like what now? And again, feeling that like I should have spoken up. I should have tried harder. I'm not doing a good job at protecting this community. Like,
I just want to say I'm so sorry that you were brave to step forward with your story and were not validated in that. I'm so sorry.
I wouldn't say that he didn't validate me, but I just remember thinking, I'm so glad something is happening that even I'm like, I'm just trusting this dude. But if I was a victim with a more traumatic story, I was thinking like in the moment, like this is not, no, we've got a lot of missing pieces here. Like, and
I experienced the same thing as you, Joe. And I had a lot of conversations with Alyssa at a certain point when we hit a certain threshold. I feel so much guilt for not saying something. But Joe, like you've been, I'm just going to pull up this comment. I don't even have to say it because someone already has. You've been speaking up for years.
Yeah.
And you have no idea how much your advocacy has meant and has helped people feel seen. And I think in this, it's been really hard because we've known how, like with this report, there were so many moments where it was like people have come forward, and I don't want to cause false alarm. I don't want to undermine our only shot at something. Yeah. And so I had to, like, I was trying to make these calls because I knew that if I threw my weight around, I have thrown my weight around, and sometimes it's had bad results. Sometimes I've thrown my weight around and it's caused like a cascade effect that I couldn't have predicted. And what I see in you is somebody who cares so deeply, and you've gone out of your way to create like literally a lasting paper trail and testament to, I mean, Joe, you went and met with Slaker. You went and met with the Candlers. You fought when no one was fighting face to face with people. Like, you did that. I watched you. I heard you. I heard your voice in recordings, and standing up for all of us and demanding a handbook and demanding changes after Tebet. Like, you went in and fought, and you took on responsibility that wasn't even yours because no one else was.
This is what I've been thinking. Thank you for saying all that. But I just have been thinking so hard this week about, like, it feels like no matter how hard you try, it's never enough. And I felt like this is all we're gonna get. But in that, like, I'm still sacrificing people, right? Like, I'm sacrificing other people's, the trauma they're going to go through this week, because I think, you know, we should just press ahead, even though I know people are going to have panic attacks. I know people are going to weep when they read this thing. Like, I know this isn't going to be good enough. Like, and
yeah,
it feels like my own version of,
feel like you're playing lifeboat
by the means. Yeah. And it's
Joe, I literally called you at 7:30 in the morning on October 28th. And I said, I'm already on my way to the airport. Let's go bombard FCF. Can I stay at your house? I'd never met you in person after years of talking online. And you called out of work. You went straight for the airport. You picked me up. You sped at 80 down the highway so we could go to FCF. You'd never even met me. And you grabbed my arm and you took me to the front where I wanted to go, right up to Stuart. You stood next to me and you helped me say what I needed to say. And you stood up to him.
You sat there and yelled at him, and it was great. Yeah, I'm not like looking to be like propped up. I'm just saying, like,
well, we're looking to prop you up.
So what I want to do is I want to take a second. I just want to acknowledge that grief. That's a real grief, and that's a grief that I feel really deeply, and that's one that I have.
It's thinking about those moments, Gracia, of like, look at what we've been through this far, and we're on some version of a finish line, and just like, I guess we can trip across it, like, whatever, like, just not letting myself get on the. I was kind of mean this week to some people. Like, I kind of went after Jono and Alan, and I'm just like, I'm tired.
You're the person that I can message and say, this person's being mean to me on Twitter, and you go for them, you know? Like, you've sat on the floor and cried with me. I mean, you are a good friend. You are a good advocate. Like, I know that it feels like it's never enough, and I'm not trying to invalidate that feeling at all, because that is real. That is completely valid. I just want you to see how much you have supported so many people and how much you've supported me. And truly, I don't think I would have been able to speak as much as I have and do as much as I've done without the support you've given me. And maybe that'd be a good thing if I hadn't spoken as much as I have. I don't know. Maybe everyone's sick of hearing my voice at this point. So
I really appreciate, well, on Wednesday, I think you guys were talking about how, like, Morningstar was watching us, and like Bethel people have been watching us, and like different people have been like, and yeah, and I'm not looking for validation. I'm really not. I just wanted to bring my, like, hey, as someone who does have some education in this, as someone who is supposed to, like, know better, like, I'm going, okay, feeling like I want to write my own Sam Storms letter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like feeling like I need to understand, Gracia, why didn't I do all of those things the day I heard your story? Like how is this indoctrination so deep seated in me that even despite my years of work and years of training, I did not take action when I first heard it. And like you said, Susan, is it my responsibility? No, it's not my responsibility. Like,
No, but I think what I'm learning is, I feel like what I'm learning is that, 'cause I was saying this earlier and I don't think you were on yet. So first, I can deeply relate to it's never enough because I have kids with chronic illness and there's nothing that I can do to navigate those situations in a way that's going to recapture what they've lost, that's going to like that potential that they have within them. I can't perfectly, like there's parts of it that are just lost and it is what it is because of medical trauma, because of medical issues. I can't recapture it no matter, even I've thrown myself into it. It was killing me. That's developing like heart issues. And so the grief of our capacity, even to know when we're wrestling through it, even to act on what we know is real. And it's so hard to acknowledge the impact because the impact is still real. That's what I used to say. One of my best friends, she was always like, you do so much. You are enough. And I was like, you can tell me I'm enough as much as you want. But I wasn't enough. My kid almost died. I wasn't enough. I didn't see it. And I should have. And yeah, she lived. But man, it took so many years to work through that trauma.
Yeah.
And why didn't, if I saw it 5 minutes sooner, it would have been different. Yeah. And so that's so great.
My big thing where I'm stuck is that like the people who didn't see it, or the people who did see it, or whose responsibility it was, right? Like, and then years later, a bunch of us finally woke up and saw it and started acting and saying things.
Yeah.
But it's like remembering back, like how many years I let go by between like hearing Gracia's story and actually doing something. Like, and looking back now and going like, that's that like power they still have over me. Or that's just like so much fear. That's just like, or the belief that it will not matter what I say or what I do or how loud I scream, nothing will happen.
Or the grief of losing your community.
And just going, like, I'm gonna go there and scream at Bob Scott and scream at Alan Hood and scream at John O'Hall. I have to take a look at like, why did it take me so long? And I'm going, okay, like I'm not in my 40s yet.
Yeah.
So what's all of your excuse?
I mean,
you're gonna hit 70 soon. Like, I'm tired. I'm tired of treating them like heroes. I'm tired of going like, you spent $140K on an investigation of a massive organization. Like, why was that same amount spent on Dalton? On one person? Like,
is it? Well, and there's a real reason for that. The real reason for that is that Tikkun chose the investigator, not them. And they would have gone with, they were done going after Bickle that way. They were done trying to work with IHOP, but Tikkun thought that they could work with IHOP. And that was Tikkun's call because IHOP would not work with Guidepost or Grace. And there was a price point and there was a need to pull IHOP in, and they thought they could do it. And it was a concession that had to be made or we would get no investigation because Tikkun was the only entity that would engage that had offered to.
I'm glad it still happened, but like considering all these things now, I'm thinking about the Debras that we'll never hear from, you know, or the Debras that whose names we don't know, who did pour their heart out and tell their story and thought it was going to be there and it's not. Like, or the people who are like, I don't trust the AG, and they're still holding those stories.
Yeah. When the investigation first got announced, I can't even explain the level of pressure I felt in that, because I knew it was happening with or without me. I knew a ton of money was being spent. I knew the AG was going to back it. I knew Boz was backing it. And I knew I had to participate to see if it was, gosh, I'm so emotional. I'm not this emotional normally. Certainly not in front of people. I needed to test the waters to see if it was safe for my friends. I needed to know if it was going to be good for everybody else. But there's that re-traumatization every time you have to trust someone like that. And there had been investigators before, and there had been people who had asked my story before, and they didn't do right by that. And now there's a situation with huge pressure. And I got texts and calls from so many people telling me essentially, and no one was trying to like put pressure on, I think everyone meant well, but telling me essentially whether or not everyone participates in this investigation is down to what you say about it afterwards, because that was going to be one of the first interviews. And so many people asking me to make a statement. And that pressure of, I don't know how I feel about this because I just re-traumatized myself. I don't know. I need to sit with it. But it's like, no, you have to make a statement because people have to know if this is safe. They have to know if they can do that. It's like, I don't know. This is complicated and it's not binary. It's not black and white. It's not either safe or unsafe. Some parts are safe. Some parts aren't safe. I don't know how I feel. And to be clear, I do not regret participating in the investigation. I don't regret the investigation happening. I think it is a really good first step and stepping stone at the same time as I am really grieving that it wasn't enough. It cumulatively with the stories helped paint a picture of IHOP that a lot of people that weren't seeing it needed to see. But individually, by the stories, it did not do right by the individuals. And I'm grieving that once again, our trauma has been used as a stepping stone for the greater good. It was a chance that our traumas could have really been given a credibility and validated, and it would have taken a couple more sentences. Like, he didn't have to write out our whole stories. He could have written another sentence, another 2 sentences on some of them, or given some of the evidence in there. There's just so many things that I wish would have been done, or remembered to use my name, because I think I reached out 3 different times and said, please don't make me a number on a page. That's the one thing I ask. Don't make me a number on the page. I can't tell you how much it would mean to me to see the words in writing, Gracia's story is credible. And I got to see the words, IS-14 was raped. So I got to see it in definitive, not a allegedly, not a, according to her. So I got the definitive, but IS-14. I'm not IS-14. I have a name. And I apologize that I'm going on such a ramble here, but
No,
I felt, the point of it is that I felt a lot of pressure in whether I gave my sign off, so to say, for the investigation. And I remember the thoughts that kept coming to my head that day were, I'm just another fucked up person trying to heal. I don't know. Like, I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I don't know what's going to be right by the individuals to do here. And again, I don't regret giving my sign off. I did the best I could with the information I had. He did not give any red flags in the interview. I brought a friend with to also look for red flags with it. They didn't get any red flags with it. So I don't regret that, but I also want to apologize. If I caused any of you to participate in this investigation and you have any regret, you have any pain, you have any of that, I am so sorry. And if you want to talk about that, if you want to work that out, I am happy to do that. Just know that I didn't do it lightly.
I want to just pause.
Yeah.
Because I think that what I'm seeing is, like, what I see, I've been here a fucking long time. And I've been out a long time. And I left 17 years ago. And Tara, everything fell outside of the statute of limitations, unfortunately. That's why there's no criminal charges. So I've been out for 17 years. And that deep sense of responsibility that you're feeling, Joe, that you're feeling, Gracia, that is grounded in a deep sense of love and empathy. And I've watched both of you step into that and engage that at cost to yourselves, right? And I know there's so much grief over the fact that it wasn't enough. And I know there's so much grief about the fact that we are, I mean, these are people we love. You know, for us, when we look at the numbers in the report, Gracia, when I look at your number and I knew it was supposed to be your name, that was painful for me. And I knew what that meant to you because you always used your name. I knew that wasn't what you wanted, just reading it. And Joe, like you've always said, I'm going to use the D word. You've always had absolutely incredible discernment, and you fought for people. And it's also okay for you to be tired.
Mhm.
It's also okay for you to not know. And what I've seen in our experience, I think, in this process, right? When we were at IHOP, if you were the voice, you were the lone voice.
Yeah.
And that was such a deeply isolating experience. And we carry trauma from that. And that trauma is real. And what I am seeing now that's really healing is that you're no longer the lone voice. Gracia, you said this to me when I was so tired. I was falling apart. You were like, there are other people who can pick up the torch. Let us just pick up the torch for one damn minute for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really want you guys to lean into that and be really gentle with yourselves because you guys are in trauma too.
Yeah.
And your trauma matters, and your healing matters, and your rest matters.
Mhm.
We are all out here and we're not going to get it right. We're not. And that's okay. But what is going to happen is we're going to be here when we fuck it up. That is what I have seen is that this community is here. I didn't know what to do tonight. I was like, shit, this is heavy. And so I messaged Paige and I was like, Paige, can you jump on with me? I don't know what I'm doing. It's such a heavy topic. And I know we need to put guardrails around it to be careful with people's hearts. And she's like, yeah, let's talk through it. And there are people that we can grab in this. I was wrong about someone. I was wrong about Ron. I think he's a good person. But I thought he was listening a little more than he was. I thought he understood or had a little more experience or just was registering more than he was. I was wrong. And I had a friend who was right. But there were two of us in that conversation. And that's what I hope you guys can take away because what I see is that sense of like I'm alone in it and it's on me and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And if we fuck it up, we are all fucking here to catch each other right now because this was hard. The report wasn't perfect, and it felt like a mile marker. It felt like a grave marker. It felt like a lot of things. It was supposed to be like a capstone. Somebody would texted me and they said capstone. It's a mile marker. They had like 5 things. I was like, damn, that's really poetic. And I think all those things are true.
Yeah.
And I think that and this is something I had to accept with my kids because I can't guarantee outcomes for them. I don't know what I don't know. So like the average time to diagnosis for my daughter's condition is 12 years, 12 to 22 years. So 12 is the minimum. And we got it done in 6. That was a fuck long, but I mean, that's 6 years of your life to get that under control. Because then after you get diagnosed, it's another like 5 years till it's under control. So we got it under control in 7 or 8 years. But she lost a lot of life. And there's so much grief over that because it was my job to navigate it. And I couldn't figure it out. And the doctors couldn't figure it out. And that loss is just that loss. And the reality is that we are going to have loss. And what differentiates between it becoming trauma that debilitates you and not, Paige, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is connection and relationship through it. And what we do have is that. What I do see is the report was it was okay. There were good things about it. I'm not going to shit on anyone's sacrifice. I think I'm proud of everyone who was in that report. I'm really proud of them for taking that risk. And I acknowledge the grief. And now we're here and we're sitting with each other. And for me, I feel a measure of healing in that, because it was imperfect. Yeah, there were panic attacks in my inbox, in yours. I know in all our inbox, we were all panicking. I panicked in someone's inbox and had a meltdown. And there was someone there for me.
Well, we're all giving shout outs for people picking up torches. Janelle, when I could not do RFI anymore, you stepped up and you started taking care of everyone. And it took me a long time to bite that gun. But when I finally did, it was like I knew that you had my back with that. And it was a really hard thing to give up after nearly 7 years. And you told me, get the fuck out, because you knew I wouldn't be able to be half in and half out and not have my hands in everything.
But I'm so proud of you, Gracia, because you were like, I need to just take a step and I need to limit myself. I don't know, I'm going to check these chats. And I was like, damn. And then I was like, I probably have to do that too. I needed to find a hard stop, because you were like, I need to, I don't remember what you said, but you said something that was so great about like finding your stability and like, like making it more concrete, or like, I don't remember what it was, but it was really good. And it helped me.
I think, there's something that I've loved about RFI and open spaces is there's permission for every level of leader to take care of themselves and to have space for what they need. And Gracia, I want to say that when I did ask you about the Firefly investigation, you gave an honest assessment of it was safe for me, but you need to find out if it's safe for you. And that is not the same thing as a gung-ho blind endorsement. And gave me space to work through it on my own and figure out, what do I think it's safe? And then talk to Susan, who had different, opinions and thoughts on it, and really was willing to just kind of wrestle with, do I think it's safe for me? Do I think I meet the criteria? What did I think? And it's one of the most healing things for me is to see all of these ex-IHOPers in therapy doing the hard work. Because I know when I reached that point of leaving IHOP and finding my own trauma therapist, I had lots of feelings about it. And it's so beautiful to watch people actually work through complex trauma and move through it. And what I hear from both you, Gracia and Joe, is grief. And sadness of like, I had to step over, the fallen to try to pave a path, but I can't forget the faces that I had to step over. And that's anyone who goes through this kind of an experience. And, guilt is the idea that I've done something wrong, and shame is the idea that I am wrong. And neither of you are either of those. You're both people who did the best you could and have to extend to yourself the love and compassion that you've extended to so many others to find it internally.
Paige, what was
It's
that?
really easy to give. It was really easy to give other people permission to step back, and it's really hard to give yourself permission to step back. And I was always giving everyone else permission to do that, and always wanted everyone to take care of themselves. And it literally took me until 2 months ago before I finally gave myself permission. It's okay. You get to take care of you too. And that was actually really healing for me, because it's back to that whole you being your own safe place, you taking care of yourself, you taking care of that inner child. And in reality, I don't need to heal by anyone else being safe for me. I don't need to heal by anyone else taking care of me. I've had people that have done that. And I've wondered, why is this not healing the void in me? Because I need to be the one to take care of me. Everyone else can do that all they want, and that's still not going to heal it, because at the end of the day, I have to be able to look myself in the mirror and love that person and accept that person for their flaws.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I need to go to bed on time.
What?
Speaking of, I
For
love you
making
very
this
much.
space for us, Susan.
Yeah.
Susan's just mad I'm calling out the everyone tag, and she's storming out of the room.
I'm
I'm
not
not kidding.
mad.
I literally put people in
jubilant.
timeout over that tag before.
Yeah, Gracia does not like me using the everyone tag, but she's not in charge anymore.
Yeah.
And
Susan,
so
were
I
you
have
gonna
my
say
own
something?
space I can use it in, and then I also can use it in RFI because Janelle doesn't care.
I was like so relaxed about a lot of things, but then there was like a few things that I was like really intense about, and for some reason that was one of them.
But I would
I think it honestly goes back to my core biggest fear is like burdening people or inconveniencing them, and I was like, everybody's gonna get a notification, and it's gonna burden so many people.
all right. Does anybody have less thoughts that they want to share? Tiffany, you've been quieter. You got any thoughts?
I feel the need to say this, and I hope it lands well, because my heart is like what I already expressed, just so filled with gratitude. And honestly, for you guys who have spent the last year and a half literally bleeding with those bodies that you're stepping over to try to find justice, I have taken time for me as I've watched you guys do that. And, I did choose, obviously, a year and a half ago to share my story for the first time, literally with anybody publicly, to provide support and basis for Gracia's story. And that was a really big thing, as sharing your deepest traumas always are. And I did not choose to participate in the Firefly investigation. Every time I thought about it, I just couldn't do it. I didn't have peace. I didn't have the bandwidth to re-engage with that part of my story.
Yeah.
Because I've been taking care of a lot of other pieces of my life in ways that deserve honor and care too.
Yeah.
And as this week dropped, all of this week dropped, I also was grieving the loss of a child and this blended family that I'm in. And it was just a lot. And as I sit here and I listen to and I hold space for Joe, I see you. I don't know you, but I've seen the way that you have fought and you've run. And in little, what I've seen has been little compared to what you have done. And Gracia and Susan, and like, you guys have literally given of yourself in a way that is more Christ-like than any leader that we ever saw on a stage and platformed. And I want to honor that and say at the same time that this isn't over. Because somebody who, this week has also been hard for, but I'm like, damn, this isn't the end of this story. No. This is a moment in time, but all of the little ways that healing and life and connection has happened, ladies, that is this work. These moments, these connections, these communities. And I just want to encourage you to not forget that. Like, we will continue moving forward in community together and continue fighting. And I am at a place now where I feel like I do have grace. I do have hope to step into that in a more intentional way. What that looks like, I don't know. Don't overflow my inbox. But like, at the same time, I see your weariness and I'm like, hey, Tag, we're not done. Like this is been a fight, and it will continue to be a fight, because Susan, your heart is worth it. Gracia, your life is worth it. Joe, your life is worth it. Paige, Janelle, everybody who is experiencing this unfurling of systematic crap, we are worth it. Our voice is worth it. And I don't think that we will ever give up on each other the way that we were given up on. And that is the most beautiful thing. And so I guess I want to end with that like, yes, this week has been hard, and yet we have gone through and we have accomplished and come so far as people, as individuals, as a community, that we're spread all over the freaking world, and somehow we're back together, even better versions of ourselves, because we can actually acknowledge what's true about our humanity. Imagine that. And how deeply we do actually need one another to heal. And so I don't know if your heart can receive encouragement right now, and it's okay if it can't. But that's my heart to end tonight, is we're still going, guys. We still got this, and we're here for each other. So
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of love that, and we're gonna let Tiffany call it a night. Really great. I love you guys. We will see you not next week, because I think that's like whatever, Valentine's Day or something. But we'll see you
Whatever Valentine's Day.
whatever it is. All right.
Some dumb day.
You guys stay on for just a minute so it can finish uploading. And okay. And